Good evening and welcome commissioners, participants and interested parties to the October 20th, 2022 meeting of the Cohasset Conservation Commission. I'm Tom Bell. I'm going to act as chair. Chris is out tonight and I'll be running tonight's meeting. We'll be implementing the Massachusetts and Cohasset Wetland Protection Acts and the Cohasset Stormwater Management Regulations. We're operating this meeting under Zoom platform. At the start of each hearing, we will elevate applicants to participate. Members of the public wishing to comment shall write their names and addresses along with comments in the chat box to be read into the record. If you do not include your name and address, you will not be recognized. Present this evening on behalf of the Conservation Commission are our Conservation Administrator, Angela Giso, and the town's conservation agent, Charlotte Bechtel. I'm going to take a roll call vote of the Conservation Commissioners now. Please reply by repeating your name and saying present. Will Ashton?
Will Ashton, present.
Eric Eisenhower?
Eric Eisenhower, present.
Kathy Berrigan?
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Chris McIntyre?
Chris McIntyre, present.
Tom Bell, present. As I said, Chris McFarland is not here tonight. So it looks like we have a quorum of 5. Looking pretty good here. We'll be taking votes via roll call with each commissioner answering yay, nay, or abstain. So our first hearing tonight is notice of public hearing, 18 Dolan Lane, in accordance with the Mass.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we do have our, sorry, Mr. Chair, we do have our 48-hour issue. Do we want to do that first?
Sorry.
Sorry. I know I'm not trying to cut you off.
Charlotte.
What was that?
I'm just trying to move the meeting along so it doesn't last as long.
Sorry.
Come on, Charlotte.
I know, I'm sorry. So
48
I'll try to
hours.
make this really quick. So I guess we do have a 48-hour issue of significance. So I'll just go through this really quickly. And we do have the owner, Dan Hackett, on the phone. So I'm going to promote him. But I'll just make this quick that I'm sure you, I don't know if you guys saw my email, but earlier this afternoon, I was at 734 Jerusalem Road. There was an accidental break of the existing water and sewer lines that were coming down Hyde Lane. They were being repaired because Dan wanted to replace the water line, which is a private line. And so when they were doing the work, unfortunately, the excavator hit the water and sewer lines. And so the water and the sewage was going into Jerusalem Road. So the roads were shut down. We had the building inspector, we had the Hingham Board of Health director. Our Board of Health director was out today. So we did have, Board of Health and building to look at public health and safety. We had fire, police, whole 9 yards there. I was in communication with DEP, emergency response teams, and wastewater over the phone. So basically we were able to, issue a verbal emergency certification just to abate the public health and safety emergency. And so since this afternoon, they have pumped the water out of the trench, which I can show in a photo. And then they also pumped the water out of the catch basins on Jerusalem Road. And before cleaning the road, what they did was they drained all the catch basins with pumps. And then what the next step was they did use fresh water to just run down Jerusalem Road into the catch basins and then pump that out too, to clean any sewage debris and stuff off of the road, so that there was no additional potential impact to Straits Pond, which is right across the street, and as we know is an area of critical environmental concern. So just wanted to kind of, show everyone, sorry, I'm trying to pull up a photo as I'm talking here. So this is a photo of the earlier today. We do have some updated photos as well, but this was the trench that they had dug to initially repair the water line, which got hit along with the sewer line. And so I'm not sure if anyone saw it today, but it was blocked off. But since this afternoon, we have been able to pump all the water out, take care of the catch basins and fill the trench. And I also have, Dan Hackett, the owner, to provide any additional input. But basically, as I was instructed by legal counsel, we did issue a verbal emergency certification just to take care of the emergency today, which is pretty much taken care of. Usually you have 30 days to abate the emergency, but in this case, this one's already done. So this would pretty much be a retrospective vote from the commission to issue the formal emergency certification. And just, we'll see if anybody else has any questions first, but that's really the update that I have on my end. And then Tom was also out with me later this afternoon to look at the situation as well. Hi, Dan, did you have anything else to add from?
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Just a special thank you to Charlotte and Tom on behalf of everybody in the town of Cohasset and the Conservation Commission. We had an issue and it was immediately supported by experts in the field, helping us make decisions on the fly in order to mitigate any risk or potential issues that we could potentially have. So just on behalf of myself and everybody else that lives in our community that was trying to improve our water service lines, I just wanted to say thank you to yourself, to Tom, and the rest of the commission. I did also send you, Charlotte, a picture of 516, which is an update from today. The hole has been backfilled, it has been filled. And then all the water has been tested for the adjacent neighbors that were impacted by it. There you go. So we're basically back to where we're basically back to where we were this morning. Just lost a day's worth of work.
So you were having a sewer hookup, I suppose? Is that what was happening in the project here?
Eric's, so we were notified, myself and my two neighbors were notified that our existing water service line, domestic water service line, was leaking.
Okay. And he then came in to repair that, and you hit the sewer line, correct?
Exactly.
Tell me, I can understand that it's necessary to clean it up. Is not the whole surface area, soil and surface, all contaminated with bacteria and all that? I mean, I'm looking at that area. I wouldn't want my child to walk through that now. Has it all been, treated with bacterial static agents and things like that, cleaned up?
I think for a question like that, building on what Tom had said, I would just prefer something like that in writing to, respond accordingly.
I'm just wondering, yeah, I understand that they have patched it and they've checked the drains, but still, do we not have a health problem on the surface there and on the road and all that? I don't know. Or did they spray it and disinfect it?
I can help with a little
Thank
bit
you.
of that, Eric. So basically, I don't think the soil wasn't treated or anything like that, but the water itself on the road was diluted with the sewer and the water line breaking. And so what they did was they pumped everything out. So they got out all of the sewage water from the soils and everything else, at least to the best of their ability, and then from the catch basins as well, so that it wasn't flowing from the overflow pipe to Straits Pond, and then everything in there was pumped out in addition to, putting the fresh water down the road. And that's actually what DEP recommended. Board of Health had concerns about using any chemicals like chlorine or hypo sprays or anything like that to treat the bacteria, because that water would go into Straits Pond. Even just a little bit of that chlorine would actually cause some more damage. And so what DEP recommended was doing the dilution with the fresh water and then vacuuming that out. Being more environmentally conscious that way with not using any of the chemicals. Because in a normal situation, they probably would use stuff like that. But since they're dealing with a critical area of critical environmental concern, we wanted to be more cautious with that. But they do have to report to DEP. Sorry, that's the biggest detail I probably should have mentioned first. So, Dan and the town worked with Woodard and Curran and Rosano Davis to pump out all the water, and Woodard and Curran will report to DEP within 24 hours. They also have to submit a 5-day report of how many gallons of water and sewage were discharged into the catch basins and outside from the broken lines. And then they do have to fill out that, full detailed report to DEP, and it kind of goes to DEP's end from there. So there's a little bit probably about that with any contamination from a Board of Health end as well. I'm not sure about Board of Health's process, but I would assume that they would definitely be kept in the loop with that DEP process. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
Thank you, Charlotte. I think that you answered that a lot better than I could have. So, Eric, I hope that helps to, address the question that you have. And if there's anything outstanding, I'm happy to respond to.
Yeah, the only question I have, I assume across the road is Straits Pond on the left?
So down the other side of Jerusalem, yes. So this is the side facing Straits Pond from opposite side of the street.
No risk of bacterial runoff if it rains tonight or going down into the Straits Pond. I assume that's not a problem we need to worry about, so.
It doesn't look like it, Eric, and correct me if I'm wrong, Charlotte, but didn't the DEP mention that just exposure to today's sunlight would have killed bacteria that were on surface? And it looks to me like the trench was filled in, so contaminated soil would be roughly 2 feet underground there, and pretty quickly, probably, since they're out of their habitat, probably pretty quickly either died or at least are sequestered by that soil. I have a question, Danny.
Yes, sir.
The sewer line that was broken was only for that one house. Is that correct?
That's confirmed.
Okay, so the amount of sewage that came out probably was approximately equal to whatever their I can't remember what the name of these reservoirs with the grinder pumps are called, but basically there's a reservoir in the ground that's 3.5 feet.
Holding
in diameter,
tank,
about 10
sewage
feet.
holding tank.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
So-
sewage holding, go ahead.
Good
Sure.
point.
So that would have been the maximum amount of septic water that could have escaped just from one house.
Yep, 85 gallons.
Okay.
Okay, that's a good point. Yep.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Thank you, Tom.
So, yeah, as recommended by legal counsel, this was their recommendation that, the commission should, vote on to whether or not to ratify my, verbal, but at this point it is after the fact, I will admit. But at least it does give that 30-day window for any potential other work to abate any other emergency, but most of it has already been taken care of. And then they did recommend that in this case, we do have our within 21 days, the applicant should submit a permit, but she wasn't really, what else is there to do, I guess, is the question. So any other work to repair an existing line is technically an exempt activity in the bylaw and the Wetland Protection Act. So, really the emergency certification would cover that 30-day window to really take care of anything else from a public health and safety standpoint. But in terms of an after the fact RDA or notice of intent, legal counsel didn't really recommend we need it in this case. So unless the commission disagrees, do we want to just vote on the emergency for any leftover work?
So do any of the other commissioners have a comment or further questions? Those of you in the audience that are watching, if you have a question or a comment about this, please enter it into the comment box. Don't forget to identify yourself by name and your address.
Do they have to raise their hand, Tom?
It should pop up in Q&A, right, Charlotte?
Yeah, I can see if anyone's raising their hand in the audience, but right now that doesn't seem to be the case.
Okay.
Give another 15 seconds, but Charlotte and Tom, on behalf of you and the Conservation Commission, I just want to say thank you again. As I mentioned to Charlotte earlier today, I'm fully transparent, I'm fully compliant. Any questions that you guys have, if you don't ask in the next 15 seconds, that's fine. You know who I am, you know where to find me. Feel free to call me anytime. Charlotte has my contact information. The report that's going to be submitted by the Woodard and Curran is actually going to get into my hands first, so I'm going to review it for factual accuracy, and I'm happy to share that report with anybody else or any findings on water testing or any other testing that we have. So I'm going to sign off now and then stay on in the background, but just wanted to again say thank you everybody and good luck.
Thank you, Danny.
and
Thank you,
I'm
Danny.
Sorry for your water crisis today.
Thank you.
In
Thank
this
you.
case, stuff happens, right?
Yeah, this guy, Tom, funny guy.
So we're going to move right along, and I propose make a motion to approve of Charlotte's emergency. What did you call it?
Emergency certification.
Your emergency certification. Do I have a second?
Second.
With a
Okay.
second, Eric Eisenhower, we will have a roll call vote. Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. The vote passes 5-0-0. Thanks a lot. Next.
All right, thank you.
So now are we going to return to our regular schedule program?
Yep.
Okay. So this is a notice of public hearing for 18 Dolan Lane in accordance with Massachusetts General Law 11, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw. The Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, October 20th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform for a request for a determination of applicability 20-25 from Donald Statsco to determine if the work depicted at 18 Dolan Lane, Lot C, is subject to the Wetlands Protection Act. The applicant wants to remove trees and brush from the isolated vegetated wetland and the 25-foot IVW buffer zone. Charlotte, can you start this by just summarizing what you've seen?
Sure, but before I do that, I'm looking for the applicant or the representative in the audience. I don't see them right away, so just wanted to, if the applicant or any representative for 18 Dolan Lane is on the call, can you please raise your hand? Otherwise, not sure we can open the hearing, well, continue the hearing, might have to continue it to November 3rd. But if you can raise your hand and let us know if you're present for this hearing, we can open it, but I don't see them right now.
I'm sorry, Charlotte, they have to, if they choose not to be here for the hearing, we can't go ahead with it anyways?
No.
We should continue it. No,
Oh.
just not that I want to, but we probably should without the applicant on the call. But
Is it at our discretion? I thought the applicant has to approve of a continuance.
technically, yes, but we, in these rare instances where the applicant doesn't show up, we can continue. At least as far as I'm concerned.
We can't go ahead and have the hearing?
There's
no one here to present it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a good idea to have it without the applicant,
Yeah.
make a decision without him. So we should probably continue, but unless we want to table it for now, Mr. Chair, do we want to table it and see
Yeah,
if they
let's
show up on the call later?
let's table it and see if somebody shows up a little bit.
Okay,
later.
I'm going to email them again. I emailed them this
Okay.
afternoon, but well, a little bit before the meeting, but
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
email them again.
Let's give them every chance to
Okay.
address this.
Okay.
So
Table it.
moving right along, then 534 Beechwood, 32 Doan, notice of public hearing. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, October 20th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on the Zoom platform for Stormwater Permit 22-26 from Joseph and Lillian Sestito to raise and rebuild a mixed-use building and construct a parking lot with an egress for property at 534 Beechwood Street and 32 Doan Street. Charlotte, would you like to summarize what you know about this subject?
Sure, yeah, so I was at the site, and this one is a stormwater permit. So there are Brendan Sullivan from Merrill Engineering and Lily Sestito, the applicant, are both on the call. So I did walk the property, and Brendan, I did send my questions, which you did respond to. So there are just some pending items, at least on my end. But I guess my first question, which is, you know, it does relate to the design, which we talked a little bit about, and I know you talked to DPW, but would you be able to go into some detail about, you know, standard 2 and the design point to Church Street? Because right now it doesn't look like the calculations are equal to or lesser than pre-construction.
Sure, absolutely. Do you mind to pull up the plan and maybe
Sure.
explain it a little bit?
Absolutely.
So can everybody see that there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the record, Brendan Sullivan, Merrill Engineers. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the site or not, but this is 534 Beechwood Street in between Church Street and Doan Street, across the street from the ball fields and the play gym. That's on the corner of Doan and Beechwood. The Sestitos also own 32 Doan Street, which is the house just to the south of that. And so both properties are bordered by the east by Doan Street, west by Church Street, and north by Beechwood Street. We have been approved by Board of Health for a septic system design for a 5-bedroom system and actually a mixed use of a 5-bedroom and general store on the first floor of 534 Beechwood. Recently as last night, we were approved by Planning Board for site plan review. So the next two are conservation for stormwater permit, and we're going back to zoning for discussion with them as well next month. Let's go over the existing building is pretty much dilapidated. A lot of it is dilapidated. We are rebuilding most of the structure, most of the interior of the structure. The old posts and beams are still in fairly good shape, so we are going to use those in some of the new. So it's not a tear down and rebuild. We are, at least in this part of the footprint, we're maintaining the same footprint more or less, just with the new shell and foundation and whatnot. Most of the garage, some of the garage itself is, some of it's salvageable, but others of the, I don't know if you've seen it, but some of the roofs have caved in and fallen in and stuff. So there's an existing septic system on site. It's failed because of groundwater. We did do some testing on site. The only area where we found some soil was on the northeast corner up in this area. We found a depth of, the deepest hole was 8 feet we got to before we hit ledge. The other one was about 5 feet before we hit ledge. We did a couple more up in the side slope here, and there was only about 2 or 3 feet of material before we ran into ledge. The whole hill here, I'm assuming, is just within a foot or two of ledge and bedrock. So what we're proposing is a larger footprinted structure. As I said, most of this northwest corner is maintaining its footprint. We're expanding over in this area. We have residential apartments on the second floor with a general store on the first floor, as well as a ice cream window that will be open in the summertime on the eastern portion of the building. We're proposing a gravel parking area, which is going to involve a large amount of ledge removal because there's going to be a cut in the slope. Top of the slope is about at elevation 80. We're cutting it down to maybe the parking grade down around 73, 74 or something like that. So that is for the parking for the residential units and the office building as well. And we also have in the adjacent property, we do have reserve parking in case we do need it. We're allowed by through the planning board rules and regs to put in reserve parking a third of the requirement. So that's what we're doing here. So I'll go back up to the existing conditions. So the runoff from the existing condition is basically, it splits into two areas here. The street itself is fairly flat, but there is if you want to call it a high point, there's a little high point right in the front of the building on Beechwood Street. And it kind of flows down Beechwood Street to the west, and it goes down to a drainage system that collects the outflow from the water supply down there. So this catch basin across the street goes into this catch basin, and then that all flows down to the bottom of Beechwood Street. The other half of the site kind of flows to the west and goes, so Doan Street in this area, it's not your typical crown road. The runoff sheet flows across the street and goes into this catch basin and also this catch basin down here. And this catch basin goes into the drainage system, which goes, actually, it shows it going from plans as far back as 1980s. It goes across the ball fields and then down to a low point further down Beechwood Street, which then does go into a wetland system and into Erin River Brook eventually off site. So our site kind of splits those two drainage systems. And what it is that, I mean, as you can tell, there's a large knob of hill and a ledge here. So the water that's going to come down into the back of the building, the water, once it gets in here, it has nowhere to go. So it either infiltrates into the ground or it goes to the west. So most of the water from the site goes to the west and over to Doan Street, and sheet flows over in that direction. So there's only a little bit of water that goes into, there's a catch basin right on the corner of the street. As you can see, the building is right on top of the existing building there's zero setback here. So it's right, and the front yard is, I think there's 8 feet there and 9 feet there. So we're right on top of the street. There is a catch basin on this corner right here. That runs and picks up the same drainage system that goes down to the end of Beechwood Street. So my thought was, so the overall for the proposed site, my thinking was taking the entire structure and putting the roof leaders into this catch basin. That would be the easiest and the simplest thing. Because so the overall site, the runoff from the overall site, pre and post, we are decreasing the runoff post-construction. It's just that in this direction, it's going to be increased. I see a little bit. It's the total flow into the catch basin is less than 1 CFS, even for the 100-year event. Most of the flow is going across the street and into this catch basin. Now I could break up the building and I could make it, I could match pre and post going to the catch basin, but it would mean putting a pipe or maybe not even guttering some of the downspouts and stuff and just having the water splash on the ground and eventually making it over and then across Doan Street and into this drainage system over here. I don't think that's a, not a preferred design in as far as what I would like to see. I'd rather have it, put it underground and put it into this catch basin over here and just have it go down Doan Street. So that was what Charlotte was talking about as far as matching the pre and post. And like I said, the numbers are like I said, they're fairly I say insignificant. There's the 100-year event, the existing flow into the catch basin is 0.6 CFS. The proposed is 0.76. So it's a very small amount, and the acre feet is minimal as well. It goes from 0.048 acre feet to 0.067 acre feet. So I think it's a minimal amount. I mean, I could try and do something to get it over the other side, but other than even, I'd rather put the roof leaders into the ground. But unfortunately, we're going to have a cut in ledge. I don't see anywhere on site where we can do any infiltration. We get the septic system there in the corner of the lot. We have setbacks to the septic system we have to maintain for infiltration as well. So I think that was the major point that Charlotte wanted to bring up.
With that, let's start with any commissioners that have any questions. Kathy, you see anything that you'd like to know more about?
Yes, actually on the ledge that you're going to remove for the grading, is it just for the grading, or is it just that part right there, or is it throughout that whole parking lot? I saw on the side it said about 180 cubic yards of ledge would be removed. Is that just right there where the height is?
Well, so this
spread throughout.
There's ledge throughout. There's ledge on the side over here. There's ledge here on the top of the hill. There's ledge outcrops in the back. Like I said, I think anywhere you dig back on this hill, you dig down a foot or two and you're gonna run into ledge. So we're anticipating that all this parking lot is going to be basically ledge removal, and it is like I said, a fairly deep cut. I mean, we're at elevation, existing top of the hill is about elevation 80, and we're going down, the parking lot grade is 74. So we probably have to go at least 2 feet below that to get some subgrade in there. So we're going down to 72. So you're talking about almost an 8-foot cut in solid ledge at the deepest point.
Okay, so that 180 cubic yards represents ledge removal from the entire parking lot, or the entire area that you have to remove ledge from?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Brendan, Eric Eisenhower. I'm a bit confused as to how and why we need 18 parking places for a second floor group of apartments and a downstairs country store and ice cream operation. Where does the demand for 18 parking places come from?
Well, it's actually, so the demand is actually, if I have it on the title sheet, which I do. So the parking demand is, so the retail space we have
Could you
almost,
zoom in on that a little bit so we can read it, please?
sure. So the retail space, which is almost 2,300 square feet, the zoning board requirement is, or the planning board requirement is, one parking space for every 100 gross floor area.
Yeah.
So there's 23 spaces, and there's 2 one-bedroom apartments, which 1.5 space per unit is 3 spaces. So actually, we need a total of 26 spaces per the parking demand. Now, like I said before, we're allowed to have 1/3 of that or 9 in reserve, so that we only have to build out 17. So that's where the 17 spaces come from. Believe me, if we think we could get less, we would build less, but like I
Well,
said,
I think the problem is my vision of a country store is actually wrong. You're building a mini supermarket here.
no, it's gonna be a general store. I mean, 2,300 square feet, it's a portion of the first floor of the building.
I guess so. I'm not an engineer. It just seems like a lot of parking places for that area of town and, but you know, I'll leave it up to you. It's something you've checked up on, so I'll move on.
Chris, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I was just looking at the zoning map and it's in, we're in the the zone, it's a surface water protection area. I'm wondering where the water ultimately goes, when it goes into the catch basin. Is it, are we in, is that discharging somewhere? Where's that? Do you know where that ultimately goes? Is that
So
part of the?
both systems actually go, let me see if I have the, don't mean to make you dizzy with but this overall. So the locus is right about where the black dot is. So where I say the system's split, one system goes to the east and goes down to a low point, which is probably down around in here, before you get to, is that Highland? Down around to this point here, and then it goes into a wetland system that goes into the Erin River, river. The westerly portion goes down to the base of the dam at the Erin River Reservoir and goes into the headwaters of the Erin River and then flows into the Erin River as well. So both of them actually end up going into, as they do today, go into the Erin River river.
I guess my concern is then what, we're parking, customers are parking there. It's, you're increasing the number of cars there by a lot. Do we have anything to, prevent any petroleum or anything from cars?
So we're doing a pervious surface. We're doing a gravel parking area. The only paved section is, which I like to have the paved section pulling in and out. There's lots of turning and people accelerating and decelerating to come in and out. So I like to have a paved surface at the entrance apron. And there's also the handicap accessible parking space, and the aisle next to it will be paved as well. So this is the only paved surface in the parking area, and the rest of it will be a gravel surface to help promote infiltration of the groundwater as well. And so in the parking surface, at the edge of the paved surfaces, we're going to have a gravel stone trench for treatment on both sides, and that's per standard 4 for the water quality volume.
Brendan, I think those of us who have gravel driveways do understand the fact that just because it's gravel doesn't mean it's going to be pervious 5 years, 10 years down the road as everything gets compressed. What is the owner going to do to make sure that the perviousness of all the gravel is maintained? Because, you know, it's very clear that the gravel becomes compressed and you lose the filtration capacity over time. How are you
Well,
going to maintain?
Well, sure. I mean, so two things. So I'm assuming there will be blasting out there, 'cause there'll be so much ledge to be removed. And when you
Yeah.
do blast, you create cracks and fissures in the ledge below. So inherently, you get more infiltration after post-construction with any kind of site like this. Secondly, this isn't a developer who's planning on developing it and then selling it afterwards. These are the Sestitos in town. And Lily and Joe, I don't know if you know Joe, but Joe's a landscaper in town, and the place it's gonna look beautiful afterwards. And Joe, I'm sure Joe will maintain the gravel driveway to make it look pristine, day in, day out.
You know, it's not a question of what it's going to look like. It's a question of the permeability over time. Because, you know, I have a gravel dive right here that was supervised by Messrs. Cavanaro. And I'll tell you very well that after 5 years of being in place, when it rains heavily, it doesn't percolate down very fast at all. It collects there because the gravel's been compressed. And how are you going to maintain the perviousness? I don't care what it looks like. I'm sure the Sestitos will do a great job landscaping. I am worried more about the perviousness of the gravel driveway in the future. How do you maintain that as it gets compressed?
Well, there's ways to, we could put in the operation and maintenance plan to rake and to, if we need to, I hate to say aerate, but we could rake and turn up the top few inches of the gravel driveway every few years to make sure that it doesn't get compressed.
Is that standard? Is that how an engineer would deal with a compressed gravel driveway? I'm not an engineer, but that seems not to be all that.
Well, I mean, other than digging it up and replacing the whole thing, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at. I mean, I know that, a gravel driveway, there's a couple types of gravel driveways, there's the gravel driveway that and gravel is a relevant term. So this is going to be like a crushed stone surface with gravel beneath it, which has less tendency to compact than a gravel dirt driveway, which you just put down, what they call crusher run, like a bluestone run, which is actually base for that hardens like concrete. If you have that type of driveway, yeah, you're not going to get any runoff. You're going to get plenty of runoff off of it because it's going to compact like concrete. Or if you use like the recycled asphalt that they take off of the roadway, you spread that back down and it's a great base. But if you use it as a gravel driveway, all the asphalt is going to adhere to each other and it's going to become impervious as well. That's not what we're planning on doing here. We're planning on doing a gravel base and a crushed stone, surface topping of that, and that shouldn't compact, as you say, to the extent that it's going to create excess runoff.
All right.
Will?
So no questions, really just a comment following what Eric said, that I know there's a minimum parking based on your GFA or whatever it is here, but if you could take something to plan your zoning as someone that lives really close to here and goes by here all the time, if they would consider street parking, because there's already a lot of paved area in this area, to account for that instead of in this lot. That's all.
So
Go ahead, Mr. Sullivan.
I'm sorry, just to follow up on that. So we did originally have parking. We had angled street parking out on Beechwood Street. And we thought we could get approval for that through the zoning and maybe even the selectmen. But then it turns out there would have been a variance through the zoning board. And I don't know if you know the zoning board, but they typically don't like to grant variances. Now, with that being said, we are going to keep one small grass area out there, and we're going to pave up to the sidewalk that we're proposing on the north side of the building. So there will be availability to park out there, and there is plenty of width on Beechwood Street to support that. So my guess is people will park out there, and maybe the parking lot doesn't get used. I don't know, but we were asked to eliminate as many variances as we could from the application for zoning.
Good. I'll just walk up there. I don't need to park there. Thank you.
So, Mr. Sullivan, did you say that you're going to take the grade down in the parking lot to 2 feet below the finished grade? Is that during the excavation?
I mean, that's just approximately whatever we need to get the, when you're blasting, as you know, it's not an exact science, so I'm sure we'd have to probably, get down a little bit further than what we need to. I mean, maybe, a minimum is probably a foot, but I'm sure in some areas it'll be 2 or 3 feet.
Yeah. So you are going to blast, right?
That would be my guess. I mean, that there's, I don't know if Lily and Joe want to feed in on that, but there's just the amount of ledge. I think if you're chipping, you'll be there an awful long time and
Your
create an
neighbors
awful lot
will-
of headaches.
The neighbors will be quite disturbed.
Right.
So, yeah. So when you, how are you going to grade the parking lot? Did you say it was going to drain from west to east?
Yes, basically the high point is going to be the southwest corner of the lot. You
Yeah.
see, here's the 74, here's the 73, and then we get 72 and then out to the street. So it's going to be, grading and, flowing in this direction.
Okay, so then ultimately, even the material that's in the below the surface, we'll call it the subsurface here, it's going to discharge to the street. Is that correct?
Yes,
And it's going to flow across Doan Street to where? And to, you mentioned a storm drain. Where is that storm drain?
so there's one up in this corner here. But I think more or less it might stay in the gutter, 'cause it like, and go down to this catch basin down here. So this catch basin rim is 70.2.
Uh-huh.
This one's 69.3, so this one's a little bit lower. But I believe it's gonna go, it might go to this one down here.
I think the issue here is after a rainfall, I mean, if we start to see some significant sheet flow across Doan Street, that's not a very good thing to my mind anyway. It doesn't do that now, does it?
It does, yep,
It does.
yeah, so all that,
Well, I know that ultimately the water goes is obviously from the pre-development contours. I can see exactly where the water is going to go, but it's spread out over a fairly large area, so that the depth of that sheet flow crossing Doan Street would be smaller than that would be exiting your new parking lot. So it's going to be a bit deeper there at that exit point from the parking lot.
yeah, so actually, I'm just looking at some shots I have. So I have, right where the parking lot comes out to the road, I have about 70.4. So right about here, it's 70.4, and then it goes
Okay,
down
well,
to,
it's obviously then it's not going to run uphill. Oh, it's 70.2 at that catch
It's not-
basin.
70.2 is down here, so it's probably gonna come out and run down the gutter into this catch basin here.
Yeah, I don't think we're real happy with probably going to do this and probably going to do that. We sort of like our engineers to give us a bit more confidence that you've got a plan that of where it's going to go, not maybe it's going to go here, maybe it's going to go there. if you know what I
Sure.
mean.
Yep.
So
No, I realize that, it's just
I don't see any contours. Oh, I do. There are contours on the street.
yeah, like I said, the 70 runs across here, so it
Yeah.
does, it does.
So there's not much of a
across-
gradient. I mean, there's not a lot of push here to get it into the catch basin.
No, there's not, it's fairly flat.
Yeah. Is it feasible to divert that water so it certainly goes to the catch basin to the south?
I mean, other than, doing work in the roadway, I could, double check the grades and do some micro grading and see exactly where, making sure it's gonna get down there. Other than maybe putting maybe a small catch basin and pipe that would get it into there, maybe that's the way to go. But as of right now, I know what you're saying about channeling the flow, but we do, going in that direction, we have significantly less flow going out to the street. post-construction.
Sorry, I was getting a message from the Cohasset Water Department on my recorder. So it would be feasible actually then to perhaps put some sort of grading at the entrance to this, or maybe at that line that runs north-south there, just move over just to your left a little bit with your cursor, not by dragging the thing. Yeah, that line there, I guess it's the property line there. Is it feasible to put some sort of catchment across that pavement, a grate, for example, a linear grate, and then a pipe that would guarantee that it's going to make it to that that storm drain to the south, and therefore avoid sheet flow spilling off your parking lot onto the street?
Yeah, that's something we could certainly look into. I'd have to, confer with Brian Joyce as well to make sure he's okay with us tying into, it looks like there's already a couple pipes coming into this catch basin from the existing house, but it's something we could look at to help out that situation.
Yeah. So all of this water does drain into Erin River, and it's up gradient from Lily Pond where we extract our drinking water. So it may not be an issue. This is a pretty small change to what's already happening there, but we should also be cognizant of the fact that this is happening in our drinking water system.
Sure.
It's just a comment. I don't have a question there. I just want to make sure everybody's aware that in fact we're dealing with our water supply here. However small that increment of now minimally contaminated, presumably by, as all parking lots have accumulations of motor oil, antifreeze, et cetera, that end up on them. So, okay, well, I don't really have any further questions. Does anybody else want to comment on the commission? Okay, we would entertain any comments or questions from the audience at this time. I see we've got a comment, and I'll read it to you. It's by John Greenlip. I don't see an address here, but I do happen to know that I'm pretty sure he lives on Black Rock Road, so I'll fill in the gap there. And he says, typically overblasted and replaced with stone gravel, which drains as a sub base. And that's sort of what I was alluding to when I was asking you how deep you were going to blast below grade or below the finished surface of the driveway, and realizing that your water is going to accumulate there and flow from west to east and perhaps end up as sheet flow. So I think we've covered that. If anybody else in the audience has any questions, now's the time. So my own feeling about this is that we should have some confirmation that this is feasible to route your water to that storm drain and remove this issue of potential sheet flow across a busy street. So would you like to continue this, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, I would do that.
Okay. Charlotte, can we?
Yes.
It shouldn't take very long to, first of all, to speak with DPW and resolve this, and it probably won't take you very long to draw it up. Would you think 2 weeks is enough?
I would think so. So
Okay.
So it sounds like the board is okay with the waiver of directing all the roof leaders to the catch basin on Church Street?
I guess, I don't know whether it's appropriate to take a straw poll here, but we can certainly ask if anybody has any objections to that. I don't.
No.
I mean, it really is a minimal amount you're talking about.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure when I revise the
Yeah.
plans, I don't want to,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah, we don't want a second continuance here.
No.
Avoid one. So yeah, to me, that's my only concern is that potential for sheet flow across a well-traveled street.
Okay,
Great. So we'll continue this then on when, Charlotte?
November 3rd is the next hearing.
November 3rd. Do we need to make a motion to continue this?
Don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, just
Okay.
as long as that's okay with the applicant and the representative, then we can continue to November 3rd.
Great. See you on November 3rd, Mr.
Great.
Sullivan.
thank you.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so our next hearing is for 32 Heather Drive. So let me read the preamble to that. Oh, this was continued, so I don't need to do that, do I?
No.
No. Okay, so Charlotte, would you, if you have any comments about what's happened at 32 Heather, can you make them? You're muted.
Sorry, sure. Let me just bring on the next team. So following up from, this was a continued hearing from October 6th. So let me just go through. Sorry, Cameron, do we have anybody else? Oh, see Rich Carroll from, who's the owner in the audience. So the following up on our last hearing, the commission did have concerns about the additional encroachment of the proposed deck into the 50-foot buffer. So I believe they have updated the plans with some changes to that. And I guess, so we can just go from there, but just noting that if we do, for any encroachment on the 50-foot buffer, the variance that we had previously granted with an order of conditions was really only for temporary construction disturbance. So depending on what the commission decides on the updated plans, we may need to modify the variance request as needed. Hi, Cameron, can you hear us? Hey, Richard.
Yep, thank you very much, Charlotte. So appreciate that. This is Cameron Larson with ECR representing the applicant, Richard Carroll, who's also on the line with us tonight. I'll go ahead and share my screen just to bring up these revised plans. That should come up. What I'm going to show the commission first is the proposed plan that was in front of you at the last hearing. Again, this is a request to amend an existing order of conditions. The focus of last meeting's discussion was around the deck located off the east side of the home here that you can see by my cursor. We had proposed to square this deck off in this area. After the contractor had gotten in there, there was a issue and complexity to the construction, tying it into the chimney where there were some gas lines there. So originally we had proposed to square this off to make it an easier build. The commission obviously had concerns with this increased area in the 50-foot buffer zone. So we, after discussions, there were kind of two options that we were willing to explore, which was additional mitigation or revising the footprint of the deck. Our team got together and felt that it would be most appropriate and felt that the commission would be more in favor of revising that footprint of the deck. So we've brought that back with a recommendation from the commission to essentially square it off with this northeast corner of the house. So, prior to that, we were looking at about 52 square feet of additional deck in the 50-foot buffer. At this point, we've been able to minimize that to this small corner that amounts to about 5 square feet. I do want to point out that the previous existing deck is shown on this plan in red. So there was a deck historically here on the site. A portion of that did encroach into the buffer. It was 11 square feet into the 50-foot. So we are still able to reduce that from what was previously there down to just 5. If you recall, it's all within a maintained lawn and landscaped area off the back of the house. So this essentially does solve the problem with the contractor and that complex build off the chimney. Unfortunately, Richard's losing a portion of the deck in this area, but it seems like a modest amount, and we're willing to make that sacrifice. So that's where we stand right now. If the commission has any questions regarding this, we'd be happy to address those.
Do any commissioners have any questions or comments?
I think it's a great plan, and in the spirit of compromise, you've done what we wanted you to do or hoped you would do. So well done.
Yeah, and Eric, I certainly, appreciate, we didn't realize that we'd be trying to set a precedent when we brought this to the commission. So, I think that's actually a pretty important thing to maintain in the town that we live in. So I do completely understand where those comments were coming from, and I didn't want to be the precedent maker.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
I also appreciate it. I echo the other sentiments, and you're setting a good precedent, actually. So thank you. And it'll still look lovely. It's aesthetically pleasing.
It will. It will.
Absolutely.
Any further comments from the commissioners?
No.
Any comments from the audience? Doesn't look like it. So I'll entertain a motion to approve this NOI.
I would, oh, sorry, Mr. Chair, it'd be to amend the existing order of conditions.
Okay, that's where we're at. Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to amend the order of conditions. Charlotte, do you want to flesh that out, or do we need to?
Sure. Yeah, to amend the order of conditions at 32 Heather Drive for NOI 22-24. Is there a second? All right, yeah, heard a
Yeah.
second.
Do we have a second?
Yes, you
Eric
do.
Eisenhower, a second.
You
And
do.
then any additional conditions or any other conditions from commissioners or suggestions there, or just?
I assume, Charlotte, we'll have a drawing which reflects the new design concept, not the one that we're looking at right now.
Cameron, I believe this is the updated site plan, yes?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're
That's
right.
correct, Charlotte. So I had
I'm
shown
on.
2 plans
That's okay.
on the screen. So the one you're
Yep.
looking at is the revised one.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. Excuse me.
No worries.
You're correct.
Okay, so no further conditions than we've already established. Is that right?
Yeah.
So with a second and no further conditions, we'll take a roll call vote. Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Chris
McIntyre, aye.
McIntyre, aye. Yeah, okay, sorry. Tom Bell, aye. So this passes 5-0-0.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
So do we
Oh,
need
sorry.
to, do we need
Yeah.
to change the variance or add the variance?
I would, yes, so we can amend the variance to just include that small deck extension of 5 square feet into the 50-foot buffer.
Right. So I move that we amend the variance to include the 5 square feet. Do I have a second?
Second,
Roll call vote. Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. Oh, Will Ashton, did I forget you, Will? No.
No, I voted.
Tom, you forgot me, but it's nothing personal. I vote
Ah.
aye. I vote aye.
And you're right in the middle of my screen. How could I forget you?
You have my vote, Tom.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, this passes 5-0-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Commissioner. We appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So here we are at Howe Road.
Mhm.
So 102 Howe Road, it's a notice of public hearing in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw. The Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, October 20th, 2022 at 6:30 PM via remote participation on Zoom platform for an amended notice of intent 22-33 and amended stormwater permit 22-27 from Edward Janowski and Sarah Curran to add a swimming pool to a recently constructed single-family home partially within a buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland at 102 Howe Road. Charlotte?
Hi, Sean. I did see Ed on the call, so I'm trying to promote him.
Since it is stormwater, I believe that he'll be presenting tonight.
Okay.
I think so, anyway.
And we do have Paul Gunn from Morse Engineering as well.
He'll be on with us.
Okay. Hi, Paul, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so yeah, my name is Paul Gunn. I'm a design engineer at Morse Engineering, here tonight representing the owners, Ed Janowski and Sarah Curran, for the amended NOI and stormwater permit application at 102 Howe Road. So this project is a notice of intent stormwater permit originally approved in 2021. At this point, the dwelling is basically built. The stormwater dry wells are installed and the site has undergone rough grading and is now ready for landscaping. To that effect, the owners have hired Sean Papicher, who has prepared a plan that was included within this amendment. There are 3 proposed revisions included within the amendment. The first is a revision to the driveway entrance, which has been revised to curve slightly and take a more
Paul, sorry
sorry.
to interrupt. Would you be able to share your screen with
Yes.
the updated plan?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry about
Thank
that.
you. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I'm just looking for the option. I don't. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the option.
That's okay. Hold on, I can pull it up.
It's at the base of your screen. You have to
Yeah.
hover. You have to hover over the base of your screen.
I'm so sorry.
Should be a big green button that says share a screen.
Oh,
That's all right, Paul. I can.
thank you. I have it. I have it.
Oh, you
Thank
have
for
it?
the help.
Okay.
Yeah, I had it all pulled up. Okay, so here we are. Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so as I was saying, the first revision is in reference to the driveway entrance. It has been revised to take a more perpendicular route to approach Howe Road, as well as include a fieldstone entrance wall. The revised portion of the driveway would propose to be paved, but is directed towards a crushed stone infiltration trench here to the right for treatment. The revised portion of the driveway would lie entirely outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, shown here in green. That being said, the redirection of the driveway would require the removal of a mature beech tree. This tree has been evaluated by a certified arborist. The letter for who wrote a letter to that regard, I think it was also submitted to the commission, who determined that the top third of the canopy was dead and that the tree was also heavily infested with beech bark disease. Their recommendation was to remove the tree to prevent it from falling on adjacent overhead wires or potentially blocking and damaging the driveway or the traveled way on Howe Road. To mitigate that removal, the landscaping plan includes a far greater deal of plantings than before. The initially approved project just had 6 trees planted as mitigation, and now what is currently proposed is 19 trees, 121 shrubs, and almost 300 perennial plantings. 3 of these trees and about 40 of these shrubs are planted at the entrance to help mitigate the removed beech tree. The second revision is in regards to the driveway near the garage. We've now proposed a retaining wall along the turnaround portion of the driveway. You can see it here. The wall does not impact the stormwater calculations and would provide a greater deal of stabilization when compared to what was initially proposed, as it's removing a 2-to-1 slope that would have been more prone to erosion. The wall also provides a greater deal of safety, as it provides a bit of a barrier to a car potentially, using the turnaround and essentially backing off the turn and down the slope. The third revision includes some changes to the rear yard, where initially there was just a patio proposed. We're now proposing a swimming pool, a pervious patio, and deck area in the rear yard. This would extend the limit of the work by about 35 feet, but a pervious patio is proposed as well as a detail provided and all the stormwater calculations have been adjusted accordingly. All of this proposed work would also lie outside the 100-foot buffer to the BVW. And while the increased limit of work requires the removal of 5 additional trees over 12 inches in caliper, as previously mentioned, a lot more landscaping is now proposed to the tune of 19 new trees. 7 of these trees are being planted in that rear yard area to help mitigate the 5 additional trees that are to be removed. I believe that's all I have. I'll turn it over now to the commission for question and comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh.
I'm looking at your diagram. I'm looking for the trees being added. Can you tell me what color they are?
So I do have the landscape architecture plan here. So
Great.
So they're not on the other diagram.
no. So if we were to honestly, if we were to add all the plantings here, the plan would become a little bit unreadable. We added them towards the driveway because we believe the commission would want to see that, but most of the new plantings are shown on the landscape architecture plan.
Paul, did you also add a reference? I think you may have added a reference to the seed planting plan on the site plan, correct?
I
Like a
believe so.
note?
Yeah, Jeff Hassett handled most of the revisions for this one,
Mhm.
but I believe we did.
Okay.
I have a
Good.
question about the wetland boundary. This was done a while ago. And I was looking at the state wetland boundaries that have been drawn, and they are not consistent with the, at least part of the wetland boundaries that you guys have drawn. And I see a gap in your blue lines. I realize those are on someone else's property, but it's relevant to how you draw the buffers. And I also realize that, first of all, the state has done these from air photos, so it's not definitive in any way. It's suggestive that there might be a wetland there. So refresh my memory about who actually did this wetland delineation, and I'm not interested about that part of it. I'm really looking there to the left. Yeah, there's a gap. You see it stops there at the just short of the property line, and the state actually shows the wetland continuing, and that's sort of inconsistent with the way the 50-foot buffer then heads to plan northwest, and the 100-foot buffer as well. And I just want you to reassure me that you know where that wetland buffer is on that other property, or where the wetland boundary is. I'm sorry.
Certainly. I am not particularly sure when they were delineated. I mean, we surveyed the project in 2021, so I assume, we do have, you could see the wetland flags. So it was delineated. I'm not sure who would have done it. It would have either been Brad Holmes or John Zimmer, and usually we label that on the plan. I'm not sure why it's missing from this, but we can certainly, get that delineation checked, hang any flags that are missing and extend that if the commission would require that.
The issue really is the area where those leaders, that the first one is Prof. Bellegarde Diamond. What does it say there?
Oh, sorry, that's this Bellegarde Diamond Pro modular block wall. It's just describing.
Yeah, okay.
Wall.
So where the text for that leader is, and even where it says proposed overhead wire, the state wetlands boundary is somewhere in that neighborhood, which of course would and as you go farther to the left, it's much closer to the property line than seems to be suggested by these 150-foot buffers, particularly right where your arrow is right now.
Yep, right in here.
Yeah, it's my understanding from both being there and looking at it and looking at the air photos myself that this is a continuous wetland and that there is no gap, but you've got a gap here between your wetland flags that I don't quite understand.
It looks like it was just that because it was coming off of the property in that way, they just stopped with the graphic.
Right. I see that. And so unfortunately, that leaves an information gap that prevents us from assessing how accurate the 50 and 100-foot buffer lines have been drawn.
this was drawn for the original project, which was the house. And what unfortunately happens quite often with some of the houses is they're going in for the contractor without fully kind of thinking through what the rest of the program might be. So there may not be enough, hardscape or impervious or some of the elements that are actually going to be happening with the person who buys the property at some point. So I think that they would have had this delineation back in 2021 when it was done, or even earlier, right? It was 2021. Paul, is that what it was?
That or 2020. I would have to check the actual survey date,
That was the
but
builder-
it was permitted in 21.
Yeah, those are the builder developer who did that.
Mhm.
And so K&E would have probably been involved in that. And so, but they would have, obviously they had these delineations and would have been done with, to your point, would have been either with Brad Holmes, John Zimmer, could have been one or two other people, but it seems like it's either one of those two gentlemen who are doing the lion's share of the work around this part of the town. And so I think it would be pretty clear that even that 100, even if it wraps around itself there, it's, it wasn't, that was delineated again, year to 2 years ago, probably.
Well, if you project those two, the red line on the left, which is the 50, and the red line on the right, it's the 50. If you project those on the current trends, it would suggest that this wetland is truncated. And that's certainly not true in the field. So I'm not comfortable with what I'm seeing here. I really would like to see the delineation that was done so that we are assured that those buffer lines have been drawn correctly.
Certainly, and I have no problem, having that delineated and surveyed. We would have to obtain permission, from the landowner, that abutter, before we did that. But assuming that was granted, I don't see any problem in having that done and added to the plan.
I guess I don't know what's in question in that. If the area, are you thinking the 100-foot that's shown on the property is in?
Well, what's in question is the wetland boundary. It's inconsistent with what the state has identified as potential wetland, and it's somewhat inconsistent from what I've seen out there. I live nearby, and I know that area well. I've been walking down that road for a decade or more, long before the current people bought it. And I know there's wetland in there. I just don't know exactly what the boundaries are. I'm not a wetland scientist, nor did I ever think that I needed to know where the boundaries were. And I would just feel comfortable to see how a professional has delineated that. I mean, the basis of our regulation is having accurate mapping here. And we have no reason to think that it's not accurate, but we have no reason to think it is accurate. So it's ambiguous. So I'd like to resolve that ambiguity.
It would have been reason to believe it was accurate with the first approval of the house and the development of the property for the original moment, right? For the original approval, the original NOI. So
I can't speak to that. I wasn't a member.
Well, it had to be. There's not a question of speaking to it. It had to be because it was approved already. We're talking about minor change to the driveway area because we felt that the grading was going to be detrimental to both kind of health, safety, and welfare of the homeowner, as well as, frankly, having a retaining wall hold up that and have much lesser slope going toward the resource is a much more positive move, in our opinion, and that should be in anybody's opinion. Increased amount of planting all along the driveway is, to me, is a no-brainer in that way. I guess if the house was approved in its area, we're not extending anything closer in any way with the work out back. And really the only situation out in the rear part of the house was just that the homeowner hadn't become the homeowner yet. It was the builder developer that had built it and was in the process of building it when they found the homeowner. They didn't actually plan for, the builder developer did not plan for the extra things that most people are asking for now or that some folks are asking for now, like an outdoor living area or a large deck or perhaps a pool. In this case, yes, a pool. So-
Mr. Papish, I don't see how that's our problem.
No, I'm not saying it is your problem, but if the property was already approved and the building is already approved,
The building was approved, but we're talking about a patio, we're talking about plantings, we're talking about a swimming pool.
and you,
Okay, so that's where we're at. I'd like to see that. Does anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, and Mr. Papich, the red circles, those are trees that have been taken down or going to be taken down?
those would have been some trees that have either, or have been down because of the construction of the house. And
Okay, so it's already, so they're historical, that's happened, all
Those-
right?
Those would have been trees that were down before we ever walked on the property, I would say.
Okay,
Sorry, just
What-
to confirm, I think it's the trees, those 5 that are all the way towards the B2. Yeah, so those are
Yeah.
the additional ones that would need to be removed. But yes, it is confusing because it's the same color. But yeah, I believe, I mean, all these other trees in red have already been removed.
okay.
That was previously permitted.
There's no issue, Charlotte, in terms of further trees being taken down, other than the 5 on the left-hand side.
Mhm.
Okay?
And then the one in the front of the driveway, yes.
One in the front of the driveway, okay.
Yeah.
And there's no issue about work within the 50-foot buffer, because that's historical, it's already been done, approved and done. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Sean, would you be able to just kind of quickly summarize your planting plan too? I know there was planting obviously in the 100-foot buffer. I don't remember if it was in the 50. I don't believe so.
so if we want to scroll the other direction, move to the right, that'd be great. Getting close. So there was a rain garden that had been approved and it was in that area. And so we put some plants to that. So we put some of our usual suspects that you would expect to see there. Native plants
yeah,
and grasses and trees. And then we showed additional planting going up the driveway.
Mhm.
Along that driveway a little further out away from the 50 and brought it in right about the same area. And wanted to allow for more turnaround area. And there's some really substantial slope heading toward the 50 or toward the property line. And it was, to us, it was not sustainable. So that's what we were proposing the wall. Between safety and fact, we just didn't think it was sustainable from a grading standpoint because it was 2-to-1, 1-to-1 slope. But it was previously approved, we put the wall in there so that we wouldn't have that sort of a steep slope.
Mhm.
That's all planted in that area with native plants to the right-hand side there. So that was added in terms of that large swath of plants on the side of the driveway, right at the edge of the 50-foot buffer.
Mhm.
Charlotte. And we
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't think it's kind of along the 50-foot buffer. I don't think you guys were going further in from that. So pretty much just staying in the 100-foot outer buffer.
That's correct.
so Charlotte, can we just summarize, what work is taking place? What are they asking for here? Is it the 5 trees and the work being done behind the house? Is that what we're looking at? And the what's being done at the entranceway?
Sure. So sorry, in general or in the 100-foot buffer?
I think in general, I'm looking at these old diagrams.
Yeah.
with all these trees being taken out. They're taken out 3 years ago. It'd be
Right.
good if we had a diagram of what do we propose to do in this project now?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, so, and Sean and Paul, please correct me if I'm missing anything. So if you go all the way to the driveway entrance, it's they are increasing impervious to the first 40 feet inside the
Okay,
driveway
that's
up to the edge of the 100-foot buffer. So
Okay.
this gravel paved line, so it was originally proposed to be a gravel driveway, so they're changing the direction just a little bit,
Okay.
to the left, yep, and then increasing the paved surface up to that 100-foot buffer. And they did redo the stormwater calculations for that increase in impervious. And then they're taking out a 48-inch caliper beech tree that has been shown by an arborist to be in declining health with beech disease and can be a safety hazard to lines at some point. So they are proposing to replace that 48-inch caliper tree with some trees here, 3 outside the 100-foot buffer. But then in addition to the, to that, they've submitted a planting plan. And originally when we had approved this order of conditions in 2021, there was no planting plan. It was just 6 trees to be planted as mitigation. So they have submitted this additional planting plan with native species. And then, yes, the changes are outside of the 100-foot buffer for that. And then the only one other than plantings within the 100-foot buffer is that retaining wall right along the driveway turnaround at the base of the garage. And then, of course, the proposed pool and pervious patio to be constructed. And then that additional disturbance, moving the tree protection line 30, I think it was 35 feet back, and taking out those 5 additional trees of 12-inch caliper or greater. Did I leave anything out, guys?
No, no, that pretty well sums it up. Essentially, the only thing within the 100 is that retaining wall and some new plantings.
Charlotte, is there a mitigation plan to the 5 trees being taken out?
Yes, so they, in the planting plan, I believe it's, what is it, 19 trees?
Yeah, yep. So
and I did check the site plan, Paul. There is a reference to the planting plan on the site plan. So that's usually good to connect those 2 documents.
Yep. So essentially with this change, a total of 6 most of the trees shown on the plan, as previously stated, have already been removed. That was conditioned with the original approval. For this amendment, 6 additional trees are being removed, and in exchange, 13 new trees are being planted. That's kind of the exchange rate with this amendment. You're losing 6 more and gaining a total of 13, in addition to the 120 shrubs and almost 300 perennials.
Do you have a map where those plants are going?
Yeah,
We can look
scroll
at.
back down to ours if you can. That'd be great. Thanks, Paul. All those,
Okay, so your mitigation plan are all the circles.
Yes,
Those are all
pretty much all the
nuisance
circles you're seeing are either shrubs or trees proposed.
Right.
and then
And so in the area of the 5 trees, you're losing, you're gaining 7 over here.
Okay, all right. That's fine. That was my question.
Yep.
It was just the geography of where your plantings were. That's fine. It's becoming slowly obvious to my aged brain.
Any further comments?
No.
So I guess we're, any comments from the audience? Okay, I guess we're at the point where you need to decide whether you're going to satisfy me and prove that you know where that wetland boundary is, or you can roll the dice here.
well, what's the risk there, Tom?
I don't know. I don't count votes. I'm not the party whip.
I'm not asking for the odds. I'm asking for the risk.
The risk to you is we turn you down.
Well, that's a question on that. That's my question, because we can't do that to the homeowner. They have to move forward. They have to go on what they understand is the house is approved because all this was done right the first time.
We're not talking about the house.
No, I know.
Cabbage. We're talking about the addition of a patio and a swimming pool that may or may not be in the 100-foot buffer.
Well, which again, if it weren't, then there would have been some sort of issue with the house, right? So more than likely there would have been a problem with the house, so that would have come into play with the house the first time.
You're not convincing me.
Well, okay, so the question on that would be,
I would like to see a complete that the wetland delineation that's been done. I want to see what it looks like. And I'm starting to think that maybe it wasn't done because it was on somebody else's property. And so you don't know any better than I do where the wetland boundary is. So therefore you don't know where the buffers are.
well,
That's the worst case scenario, isn't it?
well, all I'm saying is we can't do that to the homeowner if by having you vote on. So we really have nothing we can do on this. We have to have a new delineation done, or we have to have some verification of who did the delineation, from what I understand, but you.
Yeah.
Just be very clear with what you're asking the client.
Yeah, however you arrive at a delineation is what you're gonna have to do.
I
if-
believe, Sean, just to clarify that the reasoning behind the request for looking at the delineation is just to make sure that the additional proposed changes are not additionally in the 100-foot buffer as we see it right now. So I think that's a reason why the commission sounds like they're asking to just confirm those delineations to make sure that there's no additional adverse impact to the buffer zone. Because as it looks right now, it looks like most of the changes are outside
Right.
of that jurisdiction. But if that's unclear with the delineation and there is any potential increase in the 50 or the 100, it might be good for the commission just to see that before, kind of taking into full account the impact of these changes.
I'm sure that Morse can do that since they had them doing that, and I just think Paul wasn't is involved with it in the first go around, and that Jeff wasn't available tonight. So I'm sure they can handle that very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Shouldn't be a problem
I
to
did have a
continue,
quick
right?
question. Just because, that delineation is not on the owner's property. I have no problem doing that. That is something we can provide, get that delineated. But if we don't have permission to, do an instrument survey and locate those wetland flags, we can't really, trespass. So in that instance, would relying upon the state resources to provide an approximate line and alter that buffer to be as accurate possible, would that be amiable to the commission? Just because if we can't locate those flags on that property, we can't have our surveyors trespass.
I understand that, and I don't think you've looked at the state boundary, because you would not be very happy with it. You're not only in the 100-foot buffer, you may be in the 50-foot buffer. So I'd encourage you to do everything you can to finish those wetland delineation lines.
So, certainly, yeah.
If that's our default, that's not going to serve your client very well.
Certainly.
But if it, let me just amplify what I'm saying here. The state has identified a wetland boundary. It's not an official one, it's a suggested one, and it's inconsistent with the part of with what you've drawn on the client's map, the buffer zones. We don't see it. We don't see a wetlands boundary there. So the question is, if it was never delineated, you can't actually draw the boundaries there. I'm assuming that in fact that Brad Holmes or whoever did this probably did delineate the whole thing, but I'd like to see it.
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
Defaulting to the state is not a good solution here. But if we have to, we would do it, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah. So that was all I was asking. Is I know I have to show that wetland line on that abutting property in its totality. I was just asking, in the event that for some reason we couldn't enter that abutter, if we could default to relying upon state resources, which I understand is not the preferred option, but I figure in this instance it's better than what is currently shown.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I understand. Thank you.
I have no objection with the plan as it stands, assuming that you are outside the buffers. I haven't seen anything here that I disagree with, other than the uncertainty of where those buffers are in terms of construction of a pool and patio and the driveway and all the plantings. I don't take issue with any of that.
Okay,
So
we continue.
continuation in this case is a little bit complicated because you don't know what you're actually going to get, but you want to roll the dice and try for 2 weeks here and see if you can maybe scare up that plan. Maybe I can't imagine that the person who did this or when this was done the first time, that they're going to deny you that plan. And if you do have to get it delineated, which I hope that that's not the case. But if you do, I mean, then you'd need probably a little bit more time. I'm not sure. So 2 weeks sound all right, Mr. Papich?
I think so. It comes down to more engineering, but I would think so. Wouldn't you think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's always unforeseen circumstances, but under regular conditions, I think 2 weeks would be sufficient.
Great.
That makes sense.
Okay,
And if you need additional time, Paul, you can always request a continuance in writing to me and we can,
Okay, yep.
but we'll deal with that if we have to.
good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll continue on November 3rd, is that right, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
See
you.
you then.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, so where are we here? Howe Road, yes. 318 Forest Avenue, this is a continuance. And
Yes.
Charlotte, you want to
Yes,
make
sorry.
some of your own comments or just go right to cut to the chase?
Sure. So while I'm promoting the applicants and their representatives, so just to give the commission an update, for those who weren't present, the commission did walk 318 Forest Ave as part of a site visit requested at the last hearing. And it was most of the commissioners, I believe, Will, I think you were absent, but everyone else seems, I think, got their lay of the land of the property. And then earlier, before in the week, I had also walked the abutting property at 62 Black Rock Road. So I do have some photos, and the abutter had submitted the as-built plan showing the contours, which have since been added to this proposed plan. So Carmen can go into more detail about that. And I did talk to our legal counsel about some of the concerns that had been raised at the last hearing and also submitted in a letter from the abutter and their legal counsel that a lot of the water quality concerns as they relate to the stormwater standards, unfortunately, don't seem like they apply in a lot of these cases because we're not in a zone A area or wellhead protection area. Water quality is a protected interest in our bylaw. So that is in the language. However, a lot of the water quality language in the stormwater standards does relate to total suspended solids, which Carmen can go more into. So we did, talk to legal counsel about that, and they were in agreement that a lot of the water quality concerns would relate with this commission in terms of total suspended solids with standard 4. So I guess, does any commissioner have any questions or comments about what I said or any of the photos from the abutting property or our site walk?
Charlotte, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Sorry.
Total suspended solids and all that. You're gonna have to go through that and
Okay.
someone's gonna have to
Carmen
go
might be able to help me
and
out with
do
breaking
a
that
bit of
down a little.
education here. It's teaching time. What are we talking about here?
Okay.
Reality. So,
Yeah, Carmen, would you like
Sure.
to explain a little bit further, or does I guess the commission have any other questions? For me, we can definitely look at the updated plan, but before we do that, I didn't know if anyone wanted to look at anything that I had seen on both sites or what you guys saw on site. Oh, so I'm Tom. You were not at the visit. I'm sorry.
No.
I thought you were, but you weren't.
So just as a plain statement,
Mhm.
Anything other than total dissolved solids is outside of our jurisdiction. Is that what the legal advice we've received?
That's what I was informed,
Nutshell?
yes. At least in this case, yes, with stormwater.
Thank you.
Charlotte, if I may, I'd like to begin the presentation unless any of the members
Oh,
of the
sure.
commission. Okay, great. You were about to defer to Carmen, so I was going to jump in.
Okay.
My name's Jeff DeLisi. I represent the Blisses. I'm here with Dan and Kelly Bliss tonight, and so also Carmen's with us. Charlotte has given an excellent summary as to what has happened since the last meeting. Just a quick brief summary from my perspective. I'll turn it over to Carmen. As I previously indicated, in August, we received 2 Board of Health permits, an animal permit and a stable permit. There are no jurisdictional activities proposed within resource area setbacks here. This is a straight up stormwater permit application. The last meeting was on October 6th. At that meeting, the board asked us to provide topographical and other data, which Charlotte referenced. We've done that, done the site visit. Based on the additional data, you're going to see that Carmen has re-engineered the plan in a manner that is incredibly conservative with our abutters' concerns in mind. I'm confident that you're gonna see that we've gone well above and beyond the standards and actually engineered a system that will not only meet the standards, but will improve stormwater conditions, which is not required. I would be remiss if I did not just briefly touch on this question of water quality. You're going to find standard 4 of the rules and regulations deal specifically with water quality. What happens in standard 4 is it sets forth 3 very specific criteria. If we meet the 3 specific criteria, then we've met the stormwater standard. Those 3 criteria are that a long-term pollution protection plan has to be in place for source control and pollution prevention, which Carmen will indicate that we've done. Secondly, that structural stormwater BMPs are sized to capture required water quality volume in accordance with the stormwater permit, with the Mass Stormwater Handbook. Carmen's going to indicate that we've done that with her new engineered system. And then the third does have to do with what Eric just questioned, which is pre-treatment in the case of total suspended solids. And the Mass Stormwater Handbook deals with that. Carmen can get into it further, but basically it does not require pre-treatment with respect to this proposal because we're not proposing impervious areas, and TSSs have to do with oils and chemicals of that nature. So I think I have a few more comments, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move it right along to Carmen, so I don't talk too much. And we'll be here for any questions that you might have. Carmen?
Sorry, Carmen, Mr. Chair, we do have a hand in the audience, but do we want to go through the presentation first?
Yes, let's finish the presentation.
Okay.
And then
Well-
we'll give the audience, the
Okay.
commissioners a chance to
Okay.
comment and question, and then the audience.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Carmen Hudson from Merrill Engineers, and I represent the Blisses. I am their civil engineer. Before we start, let me answer Eric's question. So total suspended solids, Eric, is dirt, but very fine dirt like silt. That's when it goes, like, imagine the catch basin, right? It floats instead of sinking to the bottom. So if you have a catch basin, normally what we have is catch basins that are deep sump catch basins. They have a 4-foot sump. And what that allows us to do is the heavy solids go to the bottom, and those get cleaned whenever DPW comes and cleans up the sump. And then there is a pipe that goes out for the overflow of the water. However, the pipe has an elbow that goes below the bottom, the level of the water. And what that allows this to do is only the water that is between the total suspended solids that are just floating up above and the junk that is at the bottom actually goes through the pipe.
Okay.
So next time when you see a catch basin, you'll just take a look inside, and what's on top is the TSS.
Yeah.
I will try to keep it brief if I can. Let me just share the screen if I may. Okay. And actually, let me begin with this. So I just want to go over the plan that you saw the last time we were in front of you. Very briefly, the purpose of this project is to remove an existing single-family home and replace it with a new barn for 3 horses. There will be an inner paddock where the horses will be spending most of the time, and a larger paddock here in the back where the horses will be eating primarily. This pool obviously will be removed, and the patio. This patio, however, will remain, and so will the garage. So at our last hearing, what we had done was match or slightly reduce the flows that came out from the site from existing conditions. And we had 3 subcatchment areas. So what does that mean? There are 3 areas that flow in different directions. So we had one area here in the northern part of the property that flowed to this IVW. So this IVW is a design control point. Then we had this small area down here that flowed to a low point back here. And then we had a larger subcatchment area back here that flowed in this direction towards that southwest corner. What we did was, well, in this direction, because we are reducing the amount of total impervious, and primarily we're reducing the total impervious that goes in this direction because of the removal of all the structures and part of the brick walkway. Therefore, all the flows in this direction were matched or slightly reduced. In this direction, we weren't changing anything, so everything just stayed the same. And in this direction, we were controlling the stormwater runoff to by introducing a 15-foot by 20-foot by 1 foot deep crushed stone bed. And with that, we were slightly reducing the flows and matching the volumes, I believe. So during our last hearing, Tom had asked if we could use LiDAR information to complete the topographic information within the brush area that we couldn't get through our field survey. Also, we were asked to try to locate trees 12 inches or above within the brush area as well as we could, and also to stake out the fence as well as the infiltration system prior to your site visit yesterday. So let me just show you. And Tom, I have to thank you because actually I tried to get that NOAA information, but we didn't have a 3D module in the office. So we had to be helped by other offices at Merrill. So thanks to you, we are going to get a 3D module in the Norwell office. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So in any case, this was our original subcatchment area delineation, and that was based on not having information here in the brush. So once we got the LiDAR information, then this changed slightly. This got a little tighter, this turned. We discovered that there's a knob back here that you actually cannot see when you're standing in the lawn. So this is the subcatchment areas now with all of the contours all around, and there are still 3. So this area, as you can see, will flow eventually to this IVW, which is off-site. This area flows into this depression right here, which is within the Bliss's property. And all of this area over here, and also from the neighboring properties, goes into a swale that is primarily in the Bliss's property and goes towards that southwest corner. And obviously everything from the knob goes in that direction as well. So what we did, let me go to the new plan. So this is our new proposal. What we are doing is we're proposing a 270-foot trench, crushed stone trench, 1 foot wide, 1 foot deep, to capture the runoff that comes from the paddock and up here from the lawn. And it will transfer the flows towards this 20-foot by 40-foot by 1 foot deep crushed stone bed with perforated pipes. So this crushed stone bed is almost 3 times what we were proposing. And what this allowed us to do, it was to, and I'm going to have to read this because there are too many numbers. All of the volumes in the direction of the southwest corner, so all of the volumes in this direction have been reduced. They were actually reduced by 67% during the 2-year storm, and that's the most common storm, by 38% during the 10-year storm, and it was reduced by 20% during the 100-year storm. Then the flows, that is the peak rate of runoff in the direction of also the same direction, will be actually reduced by 59% during the 2-year storm. So as Zach had explained before, the peak rate of runoff is how fast the water is coming, and the flow is, holding a cup at the design control point and see how much water is collected. So we're reducing all flows, and the peak rate of runoff, so how fast the flow is coming in this direction, is being reduced by almost 60%. Then it will be also reduced by 37% during the 10-year storm, and it will be matched during the 100-year storm. The flows in the direction of the IDW will also be reduced, and the volumes will match, and this area is not going to change, so it will stay the same. So I think at this point, I am not going to go by all the standards, unless, Jeff, you think that I should. I think Charlotte already covered the water quality, and we're already, so there's standard 1, 2, 3, up to 10. We have complied with everything. We had complied with everything with the smaller 15 by 20 system, and now it's, it's going above and beyond not complying, but actually making things better with this 20 by 40 foot system. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. And if the commission has any questions, I would love to answer them now.
Commissioners?
Carmen, Eric Eisenhower.
Yes.
We've all received a letter from the abutter who is to the left diagram. And he has technical analysis in the letter, which I don't fully understand, of course. Could you go through point by point the points that are made in that letter and show how you have dealt with them?
Sure. Let me just get the letter.
I know it's been a while, but I think, one of the things we have to do here is that someone goes out and technically submits a report. I think we have to deal with the issues involved and not just gloss it over. If you agree, Mr. Chairman.
I do.
Okay, so let me get the letter.
I also would just like to say on that point that we received that letter today about 12:30 p.m. and I frankly didn't have time to read that between that this afternoon. It's a long letter. It's about 45 pages long. So I would like to have read that letter, and if somebody takes the time to write so extensively, I think it's our duty to be able to have time to look at that and consider it.
Mr. Chair, if I might, this hearing, the hearing's been open for a few weeks now. I'm sure that the applicant, Carmen, is going to address these particular issues, but what you're going to see is that a good portion of the issues are speculative and deal with matters that town council, as Charlotte just indicated, has indicated that are not applicable within your purview for stormwater management. So while I understand that you would want to read the letter, I think that the applicant would be prejudiced if the applicant were forced to have to continue a hearing because somebody submitted a 45-page letter based on speculation that's a good portion of which is outside of the purview. I do want to remind the board that there has been other matters involving horses and animals on properties, which this commission has issued an order of conditions for, which frankly is a much more concerning plan than this. Our answer to a good portion of the comments that were made is actually the stormwater design that you're looking at here, which is that we meet the standards of your rules and regulations. And while it's certainly within anyone's right to issue 45-page letters, we don't think that it would be fair to hold our applicant up to standards that are above and beyond or outside of stormwater. So I'm wondering actually if maybe it makes sense to identify those areas which town council has already apparently indicated are not within the purview, and you probably find that you're only dealing with a few paragraphs. Carmen will deal with that, but the Board of Health has issued those permits, as I've indicated. And what I want to say about that is those Board of Health regulations require setbacks in order to ensure that there are not sanitary effects or unsanitary conditions that affect other properties. We've met those standards, and we've met the sanitary standards that are required by the manure management plan, the stable management plan, and so forth. All of those issues are not the concern of this particular board, and a good portion of that letter seeks to bootstrap those issues into this meeting, and it's not fair. But with that, I'll ask Carmen to respond. Thank you.
Actually, before, Mr. Chair, if I may, there are just a couple comments that I'll just read that just to clarify just a couple things. So the letter was submitted yesterday afternoon. So yes, definitely, it's still a day before the hearing, but it was submitted yesterday, not today. And then the letter is 4 pages with, additional exhibits and documents. But I mean, I guess I would maybe, I don't know if Carmen, if it would help in terms of that letter in a lot of the concerns that have been brought up, would you be able to clarify the ones that specifically relate to stormwater management design as defined in the standards and the bylaws?
Sure.
And that might be able to help clarify some of the concerns from the abutter from a stormwater management perspective.
Okay, sure. So if let me just turn on the light. Okay, so point number 1, there are 6 points. Point number 1 says, in order to fully evaluate stormwater runoff for the proposed project, the topography, stratigraphy, and groundwater level for the entirety of the site should be determined and provided. We question whether the information provided to date represents actual site and subsurface conditions, and opine that the information provided to date is inadequate. So we have performed a field survey, and we have included the LiDAR information in the areas that we were not being able to perform the field survey. We did test pit to see what the subsurface was going to be in the location of the infiltration system. And we determined the type of soil as well as the groundwater. So therefore, we have done everything that we need to in order to be able to model the stormwater design correctly. So that is my answer to number 1. I don't think there is any validity to that comment. Point number 2, what is the impact of the shallow sloping bedrock based on the elevation of ledge outcrops near the existing pool and lower elevations of ledge exposed at downgradient neighboring properties on stormwater runoff? So they want to know the impact of shallow sloping bedrock on stormwater runoff. So I think they're talking about shallow to bedrock soils. So that is when bedrock is found close to the surface. That is an existing condition. Sometimes I remember a project I did on 110 Beach Street. There is so much ledge. There's some soil, there are pockets of soil and then ledge and pockets of soil and ledge. And normally in that kind of situation, then we will use that entire area of, okay, these are shallow to bedrock soils. So what that does is it makes the area you equate it to completely impervious area. So if we had this condition that, these are shallow to bedrock soils, and let's say we dig a foot here, half a foot here, and we find ledge, that is an existing condition. That is not something that is going to be made worse by what we are proposing.
So I have a question just on that one. The proposed plan is not an existing condition. You're proposing to change the condition, which may be worsened by the fact that the bedrock is that close to the surface, based on what you're putting onto the ground, right?
No, because the grades are going to stay the same mostly. There's going to be a slight fill over in this area. We are reducing the amount of impervious in this direction. So if there is ledge right now under the soil, then first of all, when you're talking about stormwater, it's not like being in a lab, where, for example, in a lab, clay is great because you can pour and pour and pour clay, and it will eventually absorb all the soil.
I'm not, so sorry, I should have been more specific. I'm not talking about the stormwater. I'm talking about what is going to end up in the stormwater because there are a bunch of horses here, right? Which you may address in one of the later points. So I'll, if
I'm
that's.
sorry, but that was not the point, correct? So you're making a different, that's a different concern?
Yeah, I think it's brought up later, so you can keep going. I just thought about
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so,
Oh, sorry, Carmen, to interrupt again. I'm so sorry. Mr. Chair, we do have some comments in the audience, from the abutter. They're asking to be promoted since we're addressing their letter. Do we want to go through the letter first before promoting them to provide any comments? Do we want Carmen to finish her analysis, or?
I think in fairness, the abutter should be able to describe their own letter.
Okay,
And then I think that we should sort through the issues that we have jurisdiction over and try to focus on those and try to move this along so that we don't talk about issues that we have no control over that probably are more in the purview of the Board of Health.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
yes, let's promote the abutter first. And
Sure.
I'd like to also make the point that only one of them should present this. We don't want to hear from 2 or 3 people. We'd like to see a fairly concise explanation of what the issues are and move ahead.
Hi there, can everyone hear me? Hi there, this is Jennifer Schultz, and I am a partner at Sullivan and Worcester in Boston and run the permitting and land use group there. My firm submitted the letter yesterday and the letter 2 or 3 weeks ago as well. And I'm just going to speak for about 30 seconds and then pass it off to our geotechnical expert, Mark Haley, who has over 45 years of geotechnical engineering expertise at Haley and Aldrich, who wrote the substance of the letter. But the one thing that I think is very important to note from the get-go is although Town's council may have opined, in her opinion, that standard 4 of the Massachusetts Stormwater Performance Standards, in her opinion, does not apply, we believe that standard 5, land uses with higher pollutant loads, does still apply. And as I think you all know, your bylaw notes that any review for stormwater management, treatment, and water quality must meet the performance standards of your own bylaw and the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Policy, whichever is more stringent. And under standard 5, the land uses with higher pollutant loads, as we noted in our letter, that LUHPPLs are defined to include uncovered or uncontained storage of manure. And manure, as a matter of sort of definition, means 60% feces and 40% urine. And in nowhere in the Bliss's plan or anywhere that they have addressed to date does it address urine and sort of what happens. That just comes out and it's in the field. And there's nothing they can do to vacuum that up. And so that is sort of the height of our concern. And now I'm well beyond my expertise and would like to offer Mark, who wrote these sections of our letter, the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Jennifer, I'm trying to promote Mark Haley in the audience, but I don't see, oh, okay, I think he's coming through now.
Thank you, Charlotte. I think you unmute yourself, Mark.
I should know after 2 years to be able to do that, but I keep forgetting. Anyway, good evening. I'm Mark Haley with the firm of Haley and Aldrich, and I'm the senior vice president of that firm, and I've been with the firm for 46 years, as Jennifer said. A couple of things that we want to go over tonight is specifically, which I don't think have been addressed by the applicant and the applicant's civil engineer. And the first one I'll say is that in the stormwater handbook, proponents of projects of stormwater management must consider environmentally sensitive site design and impact from development. And it goes on to say that the design should take into account hydrology. And that's very important. We don't believe that they have taken into account the hydrology. She started to talk about sloping bedrock, shallow groundwater. This is an impact, so that when you mix the stormwater today, if we didn't change the use of this property to a higher pollution level property than what it is today, we would probably not be here in front of you. But because of the fact that we are changing the use of this property to have horses on it, 3 horses to be specific, and that is going to have then pollution on the ground that is going to mix with stormwater before it's released into the ground or over land. And that's what needs to be addressed by their civil engineer before really this can go forward. And that is under standard 5 of the requirements. And I agree with what Jennifer said, is that your town council doesn't feel that standard 5 applies. Standard 5, the way I read it and the way we have read it, is if it includes manure and urine, that is on the ground 24/7. The manure can be picked up, but the urine cannot be. Therefore, all that is going to go into the trench and into their infiltration system. Just to give you a sense, if I'm doing the calculation, Carmen, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Your infiltration system, which is 40 by 20, 1 foot deep, has a storage capacity of water of about 30% of that number, and that's about 1,700 gallons. At a 1 hour storm, what you have used in your calculation, we're generating almost 5,000 gallons of water. This infiltration system will be surcharged, and the water will then start to run over the ground down to the southwest corner, which puts the water in the Greenups' backyard. That's a problem. And that has to be addressed in your design and in your civil design. The other question we have, and I'd say ask the commission to look at this system is being built in fill. There is no details of what they're going to do to blend the fill in with the natural soils. Are they stripping this all out and then replacing it all? And what type of material are they using? Is this permeable material? Or as she was saying, maybe it's clay or clay in a laboratory? We don't know. We don't know what they're doing to prevent stormwater from going overland or through the ground and ending up on the neighbor's property, which is against your bylaw as I read it. I'd like to, maybe Carmen could make have some comments on that, please. If, Mr. Chairman, if that's all right with you.
Yes, Carmen?
Yes, hi. And respectfully, the only reason that I was mentioning clay is I was just trying to explain to William that this is not a laboratory where, for example, and that was just an example, we didn't find clay here. But clay is great because if you leave it, you pour water in it and you leave it standing, and normally you do that in a lab, it will absorb all kinds of water, where sand, water will just go through. Now, does that mean that it's great to have clay if you have stormwater because it's going to absorb it all? The answer is no, and it's actually the other way around, because we are not in a lab. We are, we're talking about not just a little bit of water, we're talking about rainfall events. So we're talking about rapid bursts of water. So even though clay is great absorbing water, when it has time to absorb it, it's not good in a stormwater event, because it is so fine that, especially if it's sloped, but regardless, water is going to take time to go through the clay, where it will not take any time to go through sand. So what I am trying to, but I'm sorry, I'm getting completely off the point. But regarding this was water quality and loopholes and standard 5, I'm not quite sure where that language is coming from. It sounds like it's coming straight from the drinking water standards, which it would only apply it would only be a loophole if this area, if the project were locating a zone 2 or a zone A, that was actually affecting a drinking water supply. So therefore, you cannot look at the drinking water supply regulations if you are not within an area that will affect drinking water supply. Therefore, and the loopholes actually, they are listed in standard 5, and this is not one of the uses that are considered loopholes. If it were, the commission wouldn't have issued an order of conditions to that, horse farm at 73 Atlantic. So it is not. As far as standard 6, those are critical areas. This is also not a critical area. The critical areas are listed there. So those two standards do not apply, just like the town council said. As far as this bursting out when it rains, or, what happens is this has some capacity, yes. And during the 2 and the 10-year storm, the contributing area, so it's everything upstream of this that gets captured by this drench. The 2 and the 10-year storm are actually contained within the stone, and water under the water will percolate into the bottom soil, the natural soil. So now we're making this, so this system is almost 3 times as big as the last system was. Before, there was more overflow, and we were still reducing or matching the peak rate of runoff and volume. Now we're containing the 2 and the 10-year storm in this much bigger system. And it is a very shallow system that has a very big surface area. So it has a lot of opportunity for it to percolate. As far as what type of soil is going to be put on top, if you take a look at the infiltration system, right, you see contour number 78 here. Maybe I should blow it up a little bit more. So let's take a look at this. This is contour number 78, right? And we're proposed contour 81 to be around there. So you're talking about 3 feet of fill. So the parent material is not going to change. So the parent material, if you take a look at I'm sorry. Let me see if I can. I'm sorry, I'm being slow. Okay, so here's the test bed that we did at the infiltration bed. The first 8 inches are loam. This is very typical. From 8 to 20 inches is the B horizon. So that's material that if you actually dig a hole and you see it, is very bright in color. And then the parent material is the C layer down here. So when we do a stormwater design, we don't care what is in the A layer or the B layer. We only care about what is in the C layer. That is the parent material. So the parent material is 20 inches below the existing ground. We're not going to change that. What we're proposing to do is to add 3 feet of soil, in where the infiltration system is. And what is going to be there is crushed stone, and there's going to be loam all around. You see here loam and sandy loam. So loam is, it's just going to be the normal material, and it's going to just percolate into the same sea soil. And what we had to do here is, you see how the groundwater is here at 20 inches below? So it's right at the sea soil. So we have to bring some fill. We can put sand, we can put sand all around the system. If you want to, you can make that a condition of approval so that water percolates faster into the sand and then it goes into the sea layer. But this is what matters, what the sea layer will be. So I would be happy to, to call for sand maybe. So what happens if we were to treat this as a septic system, which it isn't? Septic systems, whenever you're proposing anything, and let's say you don't have the material that you thought you had, what you do is you replace it with sand, and you go as far as 5 feet. That is as far as you go with a septic system. So if you would like, as a condition of approval, that we have to excavate, 5 feet in every direction around the proposed infiltration field, I'm sure that is something that the Blisses wouldn't have a problem incorporated into their design. And I'm sorry, I think I covered everything, but if I didn't, please let me know.
So Carmen.
Thank you. So could I interject here? It seems to me that the crucial issue here is whether standard 5 is applicable to this project. And that needs to be addressed, I think, before we get too far into the efficacy of the stormwater system itself. So I didn't, Mr. DeLisi, can you speak to that? Whether what
Yeah,
your opinion is about whether standard 5 is applicable in this case?
Thank you so much. So I think Carmen, answered it from a technical perspective. I do note that standard 5 references the Clean Waters Act, which deals with drinkable water. But even if it did apply, what the standard does require is that in the case where there are higher pollutant loads, that there be a pollution prevention plan, which we've done, and that it be implemented in a manner that eliminates or reduces the discharge of stormwater runoff from such land uses to the maximum extent practical. So even if stormwater management standard 5 does apply, even if it does apply, what we're telling you is that what Carmen has engineered addresses the standard and meets the standard. We have a plan. We've engineered a circumstance where we are not just not increasing the runoff, but we are reducing it. And so that's actually, I think, the focus that we should be looking at here. And again, we're dealing with circumstances where standard 5 is focused on Clean Waters Act type of regulations, which deal with potable water. And we are nowhere near a potable water supply. So I think it's kind of irrelevant to, we could argue back and forth and maybe have some disagreements, but at the end of the day, we meet the standard even if it does apply. And that would be my response there.
Ms. Schultz, would you like to respond to that?
Chairman, if I might just quickly, as I noted from the outset, your local bylaw, as I noted, says to choose whichever performance standard is more stringent, the state standard or your local standard. And your local standard, while not nearly as specific as standard 5 in the state regulations, does note, and I quote, that your performance standards for stormwater management shall include pretreatment and water quality. And so there's no language in your local bylaw that ties that to drinking water. So if this does come down to a technical discussion of whether standard 5 applies or not, we believe that no matter what, even if standard 5 does not apply, that your local bylaw not only gives you the jurisdiction to consider water quality, but given the language used in the regulation shall include that you must consider water quality for all stormwater management systems. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, I was going to call on you. So I'm a little disappointed that our town council did not take a comprehensive look at the issues here. She focused on standard 4. It sounds like she should have examined standard 5 as well. So we're sort of left with the opposing views of the applicant's attorney and the abutters attorney. And it seems to me that we need to bring our town council back into this conversation, because ultimately that's who we depend upon to help us sort through these things.
Well, I find that to be unfortunate. How is it that we don't meet the higher standard of the town of Cohasset again?
In our opinion, you have not addressed water quality at all. And in fact, you have stated that you do not have to consider water quality on repeated occasions. And by that means alone, given that this board is required to consider pretreatment and water quality, you have not satisfied the standard in any way.
But if we're reducing the amount of stormwater runoff, which is the requirement of standard 5, then we're addressing standard 5.
I'm sorry, if I may, please.
Yes, go ahead. Carmen.
So we're talking about two different things here. Water quality is standard 4. So standard 4, it's not that we or that the standard 4 does not apply to this project. It does. The only ones that don't apply to this project are standard 5 because there are no loopholes, and standard 6 because there are no critical areas. However, standard 4, standard 3, standard 2, all the other standards, they do apply to the project. Now, what do you do with standard 4? So there is a water quality volume that needs to be treated. And how do you calculate this water quality volume? Well, a water quality volume is calculated by the amount of impervious area that you are increasing. We are decreasing the amount of impervious area. And if I may, I can read, this is volume 3, chapter 1 of the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook. And it says, for purposes of standard 3, that's recharge, and standard 4, that's water quality, only the impervious areas on the project site are used for purposes of calculating the required recharge volume, that's for standard 3, and the required water quality volumes, that's standard 4. So only the impervious areas. In our case, we are reducing impervious areas. Therefore, that increase is 0, and the volume that needs to be treated is 0. So it's not that standard 4 does not apply to the project, it's that it is met because we're reducing, that's a low impact design, credit, reducing amount of impervious makes you meet the standard. So
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of Carmen?
Yes, you may.
Carmen, how are you meeting the standard, which is in standard 5, that is land use with higher potential pollution loads? And we've described to you, and it's in there, that manure and urine are considered a pollutant. You have only looked at stormwater runoff being clean. You're not looking at it being contaminated by toxins that essentially have high nitrates and high phosphates and ultimately get in the ground and create ammonia and nitrates, which will end up in the waters of Cohasset. Ultimately, it will get there. And it says specifically in the document under standard 5, the first one on page 14, that you need to meet, you might also need to get a NPDES permit, but you need to meet the requirements of the Massachusetts Clean Water Act and the federal Clean Water Act. That's what we're talking about here. It has nothing to do with drinking water supply wells. It has to do with impacting the groundwater and the surface waters of the town of Cohasset.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry, Mark. The portion that talks about feces,
yes,
is that in the standard 5 in the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook? Because I can't find it.
Carmen, it is, yes, but that's just the definition, which applies generally. That's the reason for which we quoted it.
Okay, I am sorry, but I have to disagree. I'm looking at it right now. I'm very familiar with it because I do this all the time.
As does Mark.
I'm sorry, I do stormwater all the time.
Mr. Chair, are we going to have ad hoc, conversations
this
here
is,
from?
I want to return to this conundrum that we face here as a board. We're not here to try to decide which legal argument or which legal opinion, should I say, is the correct one. And I feel that we should continue with this until this board has had a chance to seek town council to advise us. I don't think that it serves anybody here to have a discussion, a disagreement where we as members of the board are left sort of on the sidelines. We're supposed to be making a decision here or postponing it until we're capable of making a decision. Personally, I understand a good deal of this. I'm a hydrogeologist, so I can appreciate the arguments that are being made about runoff, groundwater infiltration, groundwater discharge, and but that's not what the conversation's really about here. It's about whether Standard 5 applies, and it's as I'm not an attorney, but it's my understanding that the Clean Water Act is not exclusively about drinking water. It never has been. So, in fact, the
Mr. Chair,
Clean Water Act is used to regulate nitrate in a lot of places, and it's an issue for our town. Regardless of that, I don't think we can move forward as a board without getting our own legal counsel involved. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to attend, and so we're going to have to continue. I recommend to the applicant to continue, because I can't predict what members of the board, how they're going to vote, and I don't think that that's the best strategy for the applicant to try to win a legal argument in front of this board without us having a neutral third party.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate your statement and I understand it. One of my concerns with continuing this hearing and having a regurgitation of all of the same information, or having yet additional information for matters that we've already covered submitted. So if what Mr. Chair is suggesting, what I would suggest is that we try to contain this conversation to the specific issue that the commission is seeking an answer to from town council, as opposed to, I think that I'd like to know whether or not, with respect to all of the other standards, our plan, is sufficient. Because at the end of the day, we can continue this another 2 weeks and there can be another 45-page letter submitted.
Mhm.
And then we're going to need to continue again. And that's a circumstance that I don't want to be in. This is a simple stormwater permit application. And I know that there are intricacies with respect to the items that we discussed today, but at some point we need to hone in on what the issue is and eliminate all the other things. And that's what I'm asking the Mr. Chair to consider.
I will consider it. Let me just say that we can't make a decision on a partial, the bits and pieces here. We can't do this piecemeal. It comes as a package to us. It's going to leave as a package. So I don't see any procedural way to approve the components until we have clarified which standards apply and which ones don't.
I'm not asking to approve the components. What I'm asking is to, I think that the commission could make a determination as to what issues it would like to see addressed for the next hearing, and we can limit the hearing to those issues. And that particularly, it sounds to me like you've already heard a legal argument from me. You've already heard a legal argument from Ms. Schultz and her team. Now I think it's probably, time to hear from town council and receive a report on that.
I don't think we can predict what the consequences of her advice will be. So I would be reluctant to commit to anything at this point. until we have this central point cleared up. Does 5 apply or does it not?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we would also request that it not simply be does 5 apply or not, but also specifically a determination whether, even if it does not, whether your own local regulation, including the language of shall include a determination of pretreatment and water quality, would apply. And if so, even if that is the only standard that it applies, which is not our position, what type of inquiry and analysis would therefore be required?
Okay, I would agree that a more expansive question to our council is appropriate, that, yeah, we don't want to leave any stone unturned here.
Oh, sorry, Kelly and Dan, did you have a question too?
No, I guess just wanted to be heard, given we're the applicant, and we feel really quite strongly that we have not only met all of the requirements of Board of Health, received 2 permits from the Board of Health, we've gone above and beyond to accommodate and re-engineer this entire site. We've also been held to a different standard, it seems as though, in comparison to some of the other land use rights associated with other horse and stable permits and variances, et cetera, and setback variances according to some of the other permits that were granted. And it's, I would love to see this move along. I feel like it's worthy and it's noteworthy that we have been very accommodating to not only accommodate on-site visits, accommodate reviews of the plan, re-reviews, rewrites of the plan, additional content, which I think is all within the purview of this commission, and I appreciate all of that. I totally agree that this is a strategy to move it along and to, throw a very lengthy argument in front of a day before every hearing. It seems to be a pattern of behavior. And I am really, obviously, Dan and I have been working on this for coming on 2 years now, for what it's worth. And we have every intention of continuing to move ahead, and by land use right, feel pretty strongly that we're putting forth an application that is not only meeting the standards of the town, Board of Health, and we're really at this point just looking for the stormwater permit, and feel that we've met all of the components that you're looking for, and we'll continue to meet the conservation's questions, but would like to consider continuing this as quickly as possible.
Ms. Bliss, were there not 3 horses in the equation here, you would have a stormwater permit. If you were just just expand, just in terms of the pervious area and all that, it obviously comes down to those 3 horses. And so
there's lots of horses in town.
Well, there aren't a lot of horses in town. There's some horses. And in fact, the only one that I can recall, we had quite stringent requirements. They were close to a wetland. So it's a different kind of thing. I'm not aware of any precedents, and I'd welcome any precedents that you can find to present to us.
We would love to.
Okay. I think that's a reasonable thing to accept. So bring them to us, and in terms of which standards apply, I don't think that anything you've said is helps us understand whether or not standard 5 is applicable here. So I'd encourage you to continue this, to give the board a chance, the commission a chance to seek our own legal counsel. We don't want to make a mistake here. We don't want to be unfair to any party involved. We're trying to get at the facts as best we can and stay within our own bylaws. What we don't want to set is a bad precedent. So I would encourage you to agree to a continuation.
Okay, we'll request a continuation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, Charlotte, I would think that we can get adequate counsel within the next 2 weeks.
Yes, so this meeting will be posted, so I will try to make sure that happens ASAP. And I will follow up with our legal counsel for, a consultation and to make sure that, we can process all of the information we've received so far from both parties in terms of this stormwater permit and whether or not Standard 5 relates, and our bylaws, whether or not, we should be looking at that in more detail in terms of the stringent language that has been referenced tonight. So I can make that happen as quickly as I possibly can. So for now, we can continue to November 3rd, if that's okay with the applicants. And again, we can always continue as needed, but we definitely do try to, continue to the next meeting. And if there's more time that's needed, a written request from the applicant to continue the following hearing is acceptable.
I have one more comment. Ms. Schultz, you've challenged our patience by submitting materials at the last minute. Don't do it again.
Understood, Chairman.
Thank you. With that, we'll see you on November 3rd.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night. Oh, stop it.
Charlotte.
Hello.
And now, look at this, it's 9 o'clock.
Was that the last one?
9
Did
o'clock,
good,
that was the
Tom.
last one. Eric, are you still awake? Oh.
Hasn't
he's
been
fallen
pulled off yet.
asleep. Yeah, look at that. It's gone dark on
I'm
us.
here.
You're here. Show
Absolutely.
your face, Eisenhower.
This drama is electrifying. Well
Yes.
done.
No, thank you.
It's been a trial for my first shot at it. So
You did a good job.
maybe.
Yeah, you did.
Yes, you
I will, in the spirit of moving things along, do you guys want me to quickly go through my updates and we can go to our last, meeting format discussion at the end?
Charlotte, you know what? One of the best things about you as an agent, you're a fast talker. Go to it.
Sorry.
Carol,
It comes with the trait of
Cheryl,
trying to explain
can I ask you a
something to
question?
someone in 30 seconds.
do we want to go through the meeting format without Chris here?
That is a good question, actually, Eric. Do we want to hold that off until the next meeting? I know Kathy, thank you again for sending your email. I know a couple of you did respond, and I think they're all great ideas. So do we want to wait for?
I don't think it hurts to blow off a little bit of steam about, even though Chris isn't here,
Okay.
about how long some of our meetings have gone and make some Kathy, you made some great suggestions.
Mhm.
And anything that we can do. By the way, I've been running a clock for each one of these to see how long they take, just for my information. And when I see it start getting past half an hour for one of these, I really do want to put the screws in and, hey, let's cut to the chase here.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's actually one of my main recommendations in terms of, kind of like what we did tonight when we see a hearing is going nowhere, requesting to continue and then being very specific with the information that we would need. So kind of like what we just did with the last hearing, that was a good pivot because it was going to go on probably forever. And, so with hearings like that don't seem like they're getting anywhere to closing it and issuing a decision, we do need to kind of cut it at the knees and say we need to continue for these reasons.
yeah, that would have been very uncomfortable to have to make a decision about this for me.
Right. So I guess, do we want to have the discussion initially and then follow up maybe at the next meeting, like with a part 2 with Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just go through some of my recommendations, and that was one of them. But so one of the things that I always feel bad doing to you guys after a late meeting is COC discussions. I have to process them, unfortunately. I'm not trying to keep you guys up, but they do have to be reviewed and processed in 21 days, technically. I mean, it's not like there's as much of a repercussion if we don't, but usually a lot of these are time sensitive, and I do my best as an agent to try and bring those forward to you as soon as I get them within reason. If I get them less than a week before a meeting, I will not put them on an agenda. I will not do that to you guys or myself. But with COCs, we did talk about potentially putting those either first or, you know, getting rid of them before we open the hearings, or I will try my best to put in my reports earlier. Normally I do it the week of the meeting because I'm running around the week before and early the following week. So if you guys want to read my reports of the deviations, and then I don't have to explain it as much, and I can say, you know, does any commissioner have any questions or concerns about my report? Do we agree on whether, you know, this project is in compliance, yes or no, and do we want ongoing conditions? And then it can kind of just be that real short thing either at the end or at the beginning. Does that kind of work for everybody?
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try my best to do them at least a day before the meeting. So I can't do it any earlier. So I will try my best to do them a day before the meeting, or at least right before you guys log on, just quickly read the reports. And, you know, I will highlight sections like deviations. You know, I do either minor or ones that I think are major. And then a good hint that I may or may not have concerns would be if I bring the owner on, or even better, bring their engineer. That means I have questions and concerns potentially about the as-built conditions. So that's kind of like a hint to you guys. I always recommend the owner call in, but when you've seen an engineer, I'm like, yeah, you should explain this to the commission. So that was one recommendation that I had. And yeah, the second one was cutting hearings off that are going nowhere. And then my third recommendation was, you know, kind of like what Tom just did tonight, give every commissioner, you know, a nice opportunity to ask their questions and then move on to the any questions from the audience, which you did for each hearing tonight. I really like that. So that kind of, you know, made everything much more regimented instead of the back and forth. I mean, unfortunately, we had a little bit with the last hearing, but I think that was unavoidable. But I think we did a good job doing that. So maybe we should be much more, you know, cautious of the time we give the presenters, and maybe just recommending in a polite way not to go into story mode. Because we've seen that with some projects where they go into far too much detail that doesn't concern us about the history of why they want everything and where they're from and all this other stuff. And I'm sorry, we really don't need to hear that. So we can, you know, try to, in a polite way, say, you know, please give us a 5 to 10 minute presentation of your project, and, you know, from there. So those are some of my suggestions.
I nominate you. Tell people to.
Yep.
Cheryl,
I'll try my best.
We had the other situation with Lambert's, where
Mhm.
one individual
Mhm.
kept on repeating the same
Yes.
thing
Right.
over and over again. I must
Mhm.
have heard his squeaky voice 10
Mhm.
times, coughing out exactly the same words. Now,
Right.
somehow you have to be courteous.
Mhm.
I think the chair has to be firm
Mhm.
in telling these people once or maybe twice is enough, because
Mhm.
we have to move along.
Right. So like, thank you, Mr. Whoever, or Miss whatever, for your comment, but we have already discussed this and we're moving on to, you know, so things like that, trying to push it along without sounding rude. But yeah, that does definitely help, because like
I
you
think
said,
it's a
we get a lot of,
strategy of some people to just try to bore us to death. So we'll just.
They very
whether
often
intentional or
succeed.
not, they do it.
They succeed, don't they?
Bamboozle them with BS.
Yeah.
One of the points I made in what I wrote you is the question of what is our job?
Mhm.
All right.
Right.
We often get sucked into the people ask us, well, how should I approach it? And we
Mhm.
get involved in re-engineering projects for the applicants, and we're not supposed to do that. All right. Our job is to take what he submits, yay or nay, give him a few ideas, and then back out of it. But
Mhm.
you know, one of the areas we spend a lot of time is between us
Mhm.
arguing back and forth about how it could be reformulated in a way that we agreed to.
Mhm.
And the problem is that a lot of us don't agree, all right? And it's not a very firm basis to make a recommendation to the applicant. But in the end, we shouldn't be doing that sort of re-engineering. You should be meeting with the engineers on the outside, helping to focus and train their
Mhm.
thought, Charlotte. And when they come to us, our job is to, do we like it? Does it meet the regulations? Is it satisfactory? And then we vote on it, but
Mhm.
not the give and take going back and forth as to how we could rethink of it. I mean, the worst one was what was the one we had earlier on that 50 or 10 square feet of deck. And this guy all of a sudden ended up, he's landscaping this whole land, all right? And I said, what are we doing here? This isn't a landscaping project. But he actually, at one point, I thought he said, fine, I'll close this down. I'll come back and resubmit a landscaping plan that you guys will agree to. And I was gonna say, I don't agree to anything like that, all right? So he was misled by our discussion. So
I don't think he was misled. I think he heard us and he, when he gave it some thought, he realized that fighting for those 50 feet was not going to work.
Yeah.
He couldn't be sure that he would have a majority, and I don't think he would have had a majority. I don't know how you guys would vote, but I suspect that
I have never voted.
I know how would you. I do know how you would vote.
And I don't think we've ever agreed to a project in my 5.5 years that would involve work within the 50-foot zone. So
Unless it met the variance, but yes, yeah. One thing that it kind of, oh, go ahead.
The only time we do it is if there's a prior construction there.
Mhm. Yeah, oh yeah, like new stuff, yeah, right.
And the guy's building a new house on.
Right. Yeah. So one thing that it doesn't necessarily help with meeting like time length, but something that I kind of wanted to bring up too of, I definitely understand Eric's point that like, we're not, here to tell the professionals what to do and how to redesign their things. However, if the commission does want certain things on the plan, whether it's more information, stuff that we need to make a decision, that's definitely the case. But for things like, a lot of this sometimes comes down to like landscaping and planting and things like that. When it gets really too nitpicky, I always recommend to applicants, to commissioners, to engineers, I'm like, be willing to make it a condition for approval. And that's where we can kind of, bargain with these applicants that are creating these large projects. Our rules and regulations recommend native plantings for a stormwater, but we don't require it. So until you require it, we can try to condition projects. Like if we're a little bit, upset with the level of disturbance and the amount of trees that someone's taking out, we can always say, would you be willing to plant this many trees of this inch caliper native species as a condition for approval, given the amount of disturbance with the proposed stormwater design? So even though they're meeting the standards, we can still try to sweeten the deal for ourselves. And I always tell applicants to be open to things like that from the commission. So maybe vice versa from us. If we want to condition projects how we want, that might also help with closing the hearings, making it a little bit, we'd be willing to look into this, to make a decision on this project if you'd be willing to do this as a condition. So we can kind of try to steer the applicants on our side too. So yeah, I'm sure you guys have noticed that they say that a lot. That is coming from me, but I want you guys to do it too.
There is a balance between course creating and principle. And I think we actually do a fairly good job of finding that line. A lot of
I think so. Yeah.
I wouldn't say every time, but a
Right.
lot. I know we try to do it.
No, I believe we do. Yeah.
One of the things that has made a big difference
Mhm.
is when we authored 4.5 years ago, the authorized list of native plants.
Yep.
Up until then, we were spending, I don't think any of you remember it, every time someone came up, they had a different book of native plants. Some of them had North American plants, some had, coastal plants, and half of us had never heard of the plants. And they had different names, there were Latin names and local names, and it was a mess. And we are losing at least half an hour on every project that came up during the evening. So putting that standard list in, even though it's somewhat restrictive, it's a very valid list and saved us a lot of time. All right, because no one argues about it now. So
Where do these people get these plants, Eric?
there's a native a wetland plant company somewhere in mid-Massachusetts. I think it's called the Wetland Plant something, and all of the plants are available through them. There is a website which is called, and it's a monster. Vascular Plants of Massachusetts by county. And the 4 guys have gone out and have inventoried every plant in Massachusetts and then determined its origin, whether it was brought here, whether it began and then became introduced here, whatever. And it's a great website and everything is there and it's listed by county. You can go through and we use.
I'll check that out.
In Plymouth County, you can see everything that is a native, considered a native plant, everything that's invasive and all that. So that was good.
Perfect.
Sorry, Kathy, you have a comment?
No, it just sounds good.
Oh, okay.
What's the
But
website?
yeah, I guess going back to your Kathy, to your initial letter, do you have any other suggestions too on how we can kind of, channel these hearings to be shorter, better, more efficient? Also, I'm sure, I think you guys, I've told a handful of you guys, we can't have a meeting past midnight. So that is definitely the cutoff, but obviously we want to do far better than that. It's a violation of open meeting law, which I wish I had realized sooner. Otherwise I would have been more aggressive with like, okay, let's go, end the meeting.
For all the youngsters, my cutoff is 11 o'clock.
Yep, so maybe that should be our goal, but legally our
all you
cutoff has
guys
to
with
be
the
before
full head of hair
midnight.
and no
Yeah,
gray hair,
I
right?
think our goal should be like 10.
yeah, yeah.
That's it. Once we start getting, it starts getting towards 10 o'clock,
Gets
Yeah.
hard.
it's
Yeah,
gone on long enough, 4.5 hours, that's enough.
it's a lot.
Because, I don't know how much you guys spend on the shared folder looking at all these applications and, I'm sure that you're gonna at least double the amount of time you spend
Yeah.
every 2 weeks on this commission and that's a lot,
Mhm,
right? That's a whole day's work. And we're volunteers.
mhm.
I would just like to say that maybe we could have decide on a certain number of cases that we will hear. I mean, you, Charlotte, and Angela know when those cases are submitted to you, you can kind of look at them and think, okay, this is going to be an easy case. This is standard.
Mhm.
This may be a little bit more difficult. And maybe you can pick and choose which ones or how many we should have for that evening that you think may last, maximum till 10 o'clock, or I would say even earlier, but
Mhm.
and say, okay, we're gonna have this is what we're gonna have for this week. So
Yeah,
that
that's
We got that
you're not
21
looking
day
at time
clock
limit,
ticking.
you're not cutting somebody off.
Yeah, except there's a
Wednesday, 10
clock.
o'clock. Well, if you have a time limit, then if you have a specific time, then you might cut somebody off in the middle of the hearing and you don't want to do that. But if you just say, we're going to take these 3 or 4 cases, and in your mind that, that the 318 Forest Ave one is going to be,
Hmm.
right from the beginning before it even started. Horses, okay.
Yeah. I do
Charlotte?
want to cut to a legal counsel because I'm not sure we can cut off the number of hearings. Because we have like a time frame and we have to technically process things or at least have initial hearings within 21 days. And speaking of RDAs, do we want to officially continue 18 Dolan Lane to 11-3? We didn't come back to it.
I don't know. Can we just drop that and make them reapply? Hey, he's a no-show.
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
you know what?
That's
This guy Stasko, this is his MO.
I don't know if we can do that because they can always appeal our decision. And we technically are supposed to be reviewing RDAs in 21 days and making a decision. But then the problem with that is when the applicant doesn't show up, it doesn't help our case. And it doesn't, the regulations don't care if an
let's
applicant
deny
doesn't
it.
show up.
If he doesn't want to show up, let's just deny him. That's what happens in a court. If you don't show up,
Yeah.
in a lawsuit, you lose.
You suggesting we do, Charlotte?
What was that?
What are you suggesting we do in this case?
Continue it. It's unclear in the regulations if that's really okay because RDAs you have to process them in 21 days. But what was that?
And that's another question for Amy.
Yeah.
If we get a no-show, do we have the discretion then to
vote
reject it?
I would love to ask legal counsel that, but to be
Let's
on the
find
safe
out.
side, we should continue. But moving forward, yeah, I would love a clear
Let's
answer
find
about
out.
this. Okay. All right. So-
I have a suggestion
he
if we
submitted
get
his
into
case in
a
writing.
situation.
Sorry, Eric, what was that?
I was saying he submitted his case in writing.
Yeah.
We have all the facts. We have his backup information. And we should be that should be freestanding, all right? We shouldn't need to have someone come in to explain what is the material he sent to us.
Well, I have to look at open meeting law in detail again, because, with every project, it's the applicant. So I don't represent the applicant, like I'm paid to represent the town and be the liaison with the commission. I probably shouldn't be presenting the applicant's project, because it's not my project. If
Yeah,
I
for
bring
the
people in
building
for a
inspector.
show cause hearing though, then I kind of lead the case because I'm bringing someone in. But like for an RDA, like it's not my submission, so I shouldn't be explaining the case and representing at least the applicant in their stead when they
Do we
don't show
have
up.
I don't even think we have the ability to continue it without the without the applicant.
We
consent.
can, it's just technically we should be getting the permission from the applicant, but like, if they don't show up, like we could, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like a gray area. So that's something we need to clarify with legal counsel. But I don't want to make a decision and have the applicant potentially appeal,
Yeah, sure, okay.
you know?
So
So
let's
that's, yeah.
let's continue that. Do we
Mhm.
need to vote on that? I suppose we do or not?
Yeah, no, we can say, if you're okay with it,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Chair.
So-
well, yeah.
so let's just continue that.
All right.
And let's
But I
find
do
out.
want an answer on that. I will get an answer on that.
This
Charlotte,
guy's done this
I have a
before.
question for the group.
Yeah.
What was that, 3? Or sorry?
I have a question. Four of us, actually, maybe more,
Mhm.
work, actually have a paying job, all right?
Yeah.
Are expected to perform something other than for the Concom. Is
Mhm.
6:30 a good time for them? I know it was most likely during the pandemic and all of that because of
Mhm.
Zoom. But we used to do it at 7 o'clock. And
Mhm.
we always had people running in from the ferry boat and getting, coming to the last minute from the office.
Mhm.
Talk to Christopher, Will, and Kathy. Is
Mhm.
6:30 still a convenient time for you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a rush, especially when I'm dealing with the 48-hour situation that just randomly pops up and ruins my day.
Yeah.
But yeah, 6:30 isn't an issue for me as long as it's not an issue for everybody else. I mean, I'm happy to look into changing the time though, if this is an inconvenient time to start at 6:30.
It's fine with me, but what about you, Kathy?
I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Either one. It's okay for me.
So it's up to Will and
Our life.
right?
Either one.
I'm good.
So
I'm good with
whatever
6:30.
you want.
Okay.
The later,
I can make it
the
work,
later
yeah.
we start, the later we go. So
True. But also I will say for RDAs, like something to do to like, again, I will get a clear answer about if the applicant doesn't show up. So I'll make sure we know what to do moving forward. But in the cases of RDAs, we shouldn't be continuing those. Lots of boards do, like every agent or commissioners that I've talked to from other towns. A lot of people don't know what to do with RDAs because the regulations are so stringent and they don't care about, let's say something happens and the applicant doesn't show up or something like that. So the way the state language is written, the RDAs have to be processed and a decision has to be made in 21 days. So we have to issue a positive or negative determination within that 21-day time frame. So unlike notices of intent, we shouldn't and can't really continue those unless we have a valid reason, like something like this, applicant doesn't show up. Because I've asked that question before and even DEP couldn't give me a solid answer. So I would love to hear from legal counsel. But yeah, so I guess for RDAs, when we see those on an agenda, in order to not make the agendas longer for the following meeting, we close those out and issue a positive or negative. So we don't give the applicant a chance to make it better for us to issue a negative. We say, no, this is a big project and issue a positive determination if we think it pertains to the bylaws and Wetland Protection Act. So yeah, that's another, we just
Do you have any
educational thing.
suggestions of any suggestions as to what I should say to Stasco when I see him in church on Sunday morning?
I am going to plead the fifth on that. So yeah, those are some of my meeting suggestions. I will definitely get an answer on what happens if the applicant doesn't show up. But in terms of like the COC stuff, the cutting hearings off when they're going nowhere, looking at my photos. Like I said, I apologize for submitting them late today, but looking at my photos ahead of time so that you guys at least know what the site looks like. I do apologize. I put those in later. So like I said, right before you're about to log on to the meeting, just go through the photos, just like, okay, I know what the site looks like so that I don't have to share them during the meeting. And then we all, spend more time looking at stuff.
So
Yeah.
let's move on to, do you have some construction updates?
Yeah, sorry. So do we want to continue
Well,
this?
I have
with
one
Chris at the
other
next
thing
meeting?
to say about the meetings.
Sure.
Yeah.
If we ever get letters from abutters, lawyers,
Yeah.
or like we did tonight,
Yep.
I think, especially if they come in last minute, I think
Uh-huh.
those should probably be vetted by our council before we
yes.
get involved and start looking at the
Fully
standards
agree.
and arguing on,
Mhm.
applicability of
Right.
standards and,
Mhm.
I think that sort of stuff should go through council before.
Yeah.
That way it's.
I agree completely.
I fully agree.
It was
I
a
will be
waste of our
trans.
time to
Yeah.
listen to all of that. because we don't know what we're actually hearing.
Both
Whether it's relevant or
sides brought up
irrelevant.
very good points. I just repeated what legal counsel told me, but both sides did bring up good points. However, I agree with you that when we see those letters like that, I would really like legal counsel on our call, because apparently planning board and some other boards have their legal counsel on all the time. The only problem with ours is unfortunately a lot of her other obligations for different boards and her 40B hearings are all on Thursday nights. So unfortunately, she is very much busy on Thursday nights and can't always call in. So I don't know, maybe that's a question for me, for town manager, of like, our commission has been receiving a lot of very complicated hearings, and unfortunately, our assigned counsel is, not always able to join, and we're often left with cases like this. So can we have another backup? Like, can I email somebody else at KP Law and say, please come on the conservation call, we have complicated hearings? So that was one of my suggestions too, when we say, well, I kind of know which hearings are going to be complicated. And so especially when we see stuff like the hearings we saw in the past couple months, I would love to have counsel on the call to try and sift through a lot of those issues. And it may make the hearing longer, but it may make us maybe channel a decision a little bit more quickly, not
Okay, let's
dragging
move
it on.
to construction updates, moving right along.
Yes, sorry, Tom. But yeah, sorry, just quick question. Do we want to
Yeah, give
continue
us
this
5
with
minutes.
Chris or just end the discussion? Do we
Continue
want to
what-
add this to the agenda for next time or no?
Well, yeah, sure.
Okay, all right.
I mean,
all right.
yeah. We
Okay.
need his input too.
Yeah,
about-
to every meeting.
The meeting.
Okay, I'll add it to next agenda. Okay, construction updates. I'm gonna start with 2 really quick ones. So 68 Nichols Road, remember the RDA that we had some concerns about vegetation removal? So they were like some bushes that were cut down, right in the coastal bank area, 50-foot buffer. So they apparently, according to their landscape designer, they weren't really fully removed or cut. They were really just kind of severely pruned, and they can handle that kind of condition. So they weren't technically removed. So I don't know if the commission has any other questions or if you want me to work with them on submitting an after the fact submission, but according to their landscape designers, they were really just hacking it down so that they could prune it and have it grow into a better, shape. And he said they were equipped to handle that type of pruning. I was like, that doesn't look like pruning to me, but it says they,
Get some
Is the plant
pictures and
still alive?
circulate some pictures, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Oh, it's, yeah, I'll send,
Is
yeah,
it
I'll send a
still
photo.
alive?
What was
Is it
that?
Still alive.
Yeah, apparently that's what they said, but it looked like it was cut down to the stems, but they said that plant could
Circulate some
handle.
pictures. That's
Okay.
I think if we see him, we might be better served to.
Okay.
Actually.
Do you want me to pull it up quickly? I do have a photo. No, yes. I don't know. I'll pull it up super quickly, but I won't go into more detail after that. It'll be whatever you guys think.
Yeah, just a quick peek.
Do you
Yeah.
have the name of the, do you have the name of the plant?
Hold on. It was. Sorry, I'm pulling up in an email. And of course, my,
Oh, well, forget it. We'll do it next week.
Yeah, do it next
That's
week.
okay.
So how about 139 Hall Street?
my computer's going pretty slowly, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're freezing too.
You turned from video to a still shot. It's not a bad one, though.
Hold on. Sorry, guys. Is this better? Is this better? No?
Now
I
I can
can't
hear
leave
you.
the meeting.
We can still hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't wanna, if you guys can't hear me, I don't know if I can keep running this meeting, because if I jump off, I end the meeting. So, I mean, I'll share photos, but basically, he said they were pruned
Just post them, Charlotte.
and they weren't removed officially. I was like, okay.
Charlotte, put them in the nerd file. That's good enough. We can look at them at our leisure.
There are a lot of plants, Charlotte, you can cut down to their base and they come back strongly. Matter of fact, that's a pruning strategy for a lot of plants. So you need the name of the plant and all that.
Okay, all right, I'll circulate that. Okay, and then 139.
139 Hall Street, what's going on with that scope law?
Yep, so when we were at, Tom and I were at 26 Lambert's Lane for looking at the enforcement order. Just to give you guys a quick update on that, you know, he has 30 days to reseed the area. We staked everything, and with our permission, you know, we gave him the ability to use the necessary equipment that we specified in an email back to him following up from the order that he could use to clean up the site. But no more activity is occurring, and he will be submitting a stormwater permit by November 15th with the restoration work update in 30 days. But anyway, when I was there, we noticed a guy across the way with a crane cutting down trees. So I went over there and I stopped it, and they had removed the tree was partially uprooted. It was a Bradford pear that was basically uprooted and falling over into the driveway. So I did give the permission for them to take that tree out, but I said any other tree that's not deemed a safety hazard as it is right now, you need to submit an RDA. So that RDA will be, I won't talk about it because I don't want to start a hearing before it started, but that has been submitted for the next meeting. So you guys will hear more information about that on November 3rd. And then the other construction updates, 87 to 124 Elm, they did have some updates to the site plan. So you guys will also see that on November 3rd. They're waiting for a foundation permit, but I noticed in the foundation permit that there was an updated plan. So I'm bringing them back to you guys. And then 147 South Main, following up on our site contamination investigation. They did the water quality samples. The water quality samples were, I don't know the exact numbers because I want to get the reports myself, but they were below the parts per million requirement that is a concern with contamination with water. However, we're still waiting on the soil sample analysis. So I will keep you guys posted on that. And a lot of this, like, again, is all being submitted to DEP as part of their 120-day notification report. So the applicant is fully complying with that so far, and we're kind of just waiting for all the results. And then last but not least, 256, 258 North Main, the giant crater site. So I have updates from both engineers. So this is Cavanero, Merrill, and Morse Engineering working on both properties. So in terms of the total disturbance on the site, after speaking with the engineers and the applicant and the owners, blah, 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 I do my homework, I talk to everyone. Both engineers are standing by their initial total disturbance number, which for each project for 256 in the back and 258 in the front was 4,900 square feet of alteration. So just shy of the 5,000 square foot limit for a full stormwater permit. They are standing by that number because in between both properties is a septic system that is being shared with both parcels. And what was previously on the property was an existing bad, pathetically functioning septic system. And so if you look at the stormwater bylaws, the replacement and maintenance of a septic system is an exempt alteration activity in the stormwater bylaws. So Cavanero said they did not include that leaching field in their total alteration for the project. And then Morse Engineering did the same thing where they also clarified that some of the prior disturbance was from the 256 North Main project. So with the septic tank, the leaching field installation and a portion of the turnaround driveway at 256 North Main, all of that was not included in 258 North Main's total alteration, which is why both sites are still standing by their 4,900 square feet. However, I know that the commission is obviously very concerned with, we're seeing this giant crater every single day we drive by North Main. So I told both engineers that I would relay these updates to the commission. And if you guys still have concerns, I did discuss the possibility of a show cause hearing if we still think there is a violation of the administrative permit and whether or not we need to investigate it a little bit more to see if a full stormwater permit should be applied for. The only thing I'll just note is that 256 North Main in the back is pretty much done. They're just waiting on, reseeding and restabilizing everything for certificate of compliance. And then 258 North Main obviously still has a ways to go, but I guess it's up to you guys as commissioners of, do we agree with what the engineers have clarified with me, or do we want to hear more information?
Well, if we believe their numbers, you've been out there, and we've already been through this with 139 Hall Street, where it was obvious that they had exceeded 5,000 square feet. it's a little harder here because
Mhm.
you've got this big disturbance, but you've also got this big hole in the ground that is exempt. So,
Mhm.
you know, you got kind of a donut, you've got to eyeball, and that's hard.
Yeah, I was
know.
gonna say, it is unfortunately very
You know,
difficult.
these are reputable engineers, and I guess I would defer to them. I don't think they would risk their licenses to BS us. No, you know, 139 Hall Street is a different kettle of fish, I would say, where they're
Mhm.
so maybe a little bit less leeway over there, but if I would say that if the engineers are saying this, that I'd be inclined to accept it.
Okay.
I don't know how
Um,
anybody else feels, and that's just my opinion about it.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's a
does
little
everybody
late to
else
do
agree?
anything about it anyway. I mean,
Yeah,
so
at least for 256 it is, for 258 possibly not, but yeah, actually, you know what, before my computer freaks out again, I'm gonna try to pull up a clarification diagram that he sent me, which is kind of helpful because I wanna show you guys that it looks like that they, you know, he showed sorry, I'm trying to pull it up in my emails, but he showed a sketch basically of an etched area on the site plan showing that that was prior disturbance from 256 to 258 North Main. And, you know, sorry, 256 North Main. And, sorry, give me one sec, I'm pulling this up right now. So this is what Jeff Hassett sent for 258. So this shared septic system that you guys can see crosses both property lines. So for 256 North Main, this area right here, you know, was not included in the total disturbance since it was a replacement of a septic system. So it wasn't the installation of a new one. I think that would have been a different case where it should have been, it would have been included in the alteration, but because this was an existing system that was replaced and made, you know, better, this portion of the work for 256 North Main in the back was not included in the total disturbance for this project. And then for 258, you know, since they were disturbing this area to install the septic tanks, and then there is a portion of the turnaround driveway here that was in 258 North Main, this disturbance was not included in the 4,900 square foot alteration total for this project at 258 in the front. So yeah, this is what this is what Morse Engineering sent me, and then Kevin Arrow just sent me an email, but this is kind of what they're trying to prove, that they didn't alter 5,000 square feet given the shared septic and then some previous disturbance on 256.
seems like they engineered this.
Mhm.
Borrowing here and putting it there.
Tit for tat, yeah.
Yeah, right. I think it's a little late in the day to do much about it, huh?
Well, it's up to you guys. I mean, I did say that, you know, if the commission still has concerns of whether or not there was a violation with that 5,000 square foot, you know, it's, and we can bring them in and they can clarify it maybe in more detail from what I'm doing now, but it's up to you guys. I mean, it really depends on how concerned we are with, do we believe what they say, or do we need more information to kind of, you know, hear that from them, or need to see any additional, you know, numbers or things, you know, that they have already either submitted or that they need to kind of further clarify for us.
I think Chris is fairly concerned about this, so.
Yep,
Why
he
don't-
is, yeah.
Why don't we talk about this on November 3rd, if it's possible to wait that long to do anything about this?
Okay. Yeah, I in terms of stopping the work, I mean, if there's no clear violation, I can't really do that, unfortunately. I can really stop the work when I feel there's a violation.
Right.
So right now I'm not entirely convinced, but I can definitely continue this discussion on November 3rd. I don't think I'd be able to put a stop work order on the sites unless I'm more convinced there's a violation here.
Right.
But yeah, I'm definitely happy to continue this conversation to November 3rd and see what Chris thinks too.
Okay, with that,
All right.
and I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Could I say one more thing?
Go ahead, Kathy.
Sure.
Just 1 minute. When I mentioned that we didn't get the letter until today at 12:30, Ms. Schultz wrote back in the chat that she sent it yesterday. So I went back and I checked my email, and in fact, she had sent it yesterday.
It's okay, Kathy. Don't worry about
So
it.
I sent Charlotte a note apologizing, and I sent one to Ms. Schultz also, so I just.
Oh, you didn't have to do that. I just wanted to
Right,
clarify before she
Don't
did.
worry about it.
No, that.
So she didn't really
That's,
send
that's
it
fine, Kathy.
last minute.
Uh,
That's-
Well, either way, it was still
I
sent a
think,
day
I
before
think
the
I sent a
meeting.
pretty strong message. Don't
Yep.
send us stuff at the
Thank
last
you.
minute.
Don't
Yeah,
wait till the last
still want
minute.
7 days at least, right?
No, well, unfortunately, the applicant is bound by submitting things to us in 7 days, but that does not include anything from abutters. So unfortunately, abutters can send letters, things at any time. And unfortunately, it does clog us up. You know, I saw that letter and I was like, wow, okay. You know, I don't have time to, you know, process this as I should, but yeah, unfortunately, abutters don't really pertain to that 7-day requirement. That's the applicant.
Yeah, well, you know, when you pull a stunt like that,
Oh, yeah,
it just doesn't help your case, let's say.
right. No, yeah, agreed.
Did you want a motion to adjourn?
I do want a motion to adjourn. You
So
making
moved.
it? I'll second it.
Second, third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Say
Well
aye.
done. And
Aye.
Tom,
All right, you guys.
Good job, Tom. Thank
Good
you,
night.
guys.
Thanks.
Meeting.
Good job, Tom.
See you in
Thank
2
you,
weeks.
Charlotte.
Thank you, guys. Have a
Tom,
wonderful weekend. Bye.